Hey guys, welcome to the show, Fiddler's Green Podcast. I believe this is episode 61, Aftermath and Reflections. I am indeed getting this show on a regular schedule, whether it kills me or not. It'll be hopefully every other Tuesday. I have another Tuesday obligation, so that way I know that Tuesday nights are always going to be clear. So in the every other week event where I don't have that obligation, a family obligation, I can come here and do the podcast. But it doesn't not necessarily mean that anything is going to have happened or that I'm going to have any reflections worth noting, because if you've logged on to watch me talk about some topic that I haven't talked about yet, I think you might be sorely mistaken, because all I'm going to talk about right now is the post Charlie Kirk world, which is just it's been eating me, man. It's it's something that, eating me might not be the right word, but it's like any death of somebody you know. And I never knew Charlie Kirk, but it's the same way. It's not the death that affects you, but just sort of the way the world feels afterwards. And it's just been rough, because for myself, as somebody who came from a blue state and has in fact moved back to a blue state because of the stage in modern America. What's the point? I guess I've never not lived in a blue state. I went from California to Washington to Oregon to New Jersey. I briefly lived in Michigan. That's the closest I've ever gotten to living in a red state, and it was a swing state. Not even, and I think it's blue now. In fact, it's very far away from an actual red state. But it's just the aftermath of the Kirk assassination has just been cold. It's just been absolute coldness is my only god. I forget, it was that Schopenhauer. It was famously repeated by Nick Land. Uh, just the political environment is bleak, and it's not that. In some weird ways, as a right winger, and in some weird cynical way, immediately it has kind of benefited us in a lot of ways. Other than just the initial tragedy of it, the fact that this has created such a narrative stick in the spokes of almost all progressive movements, almost all progressive pieces of the coalition, has just been kind of a godsend. Also, the ability to kind of put aside our differences and look at the actual problem that we have on our hands. The fact that it came right after that horrific murder of Arina Zarutska in the Charlotte light rail system. That was just and then before that, there was a shooting at the Annunciation Catholic School. And this just clarified in no uncertain terms just what the task is. Like, why are we even doing politics? This is the fundamental question that we all have to ask ourselves when we do politics, is why are we doing politics? But it's just the real thing for me, and it's just the aftermath of the. Now I'll skip ahead here. I mean, the real problem for myself is just I don't exactly know what I expected last week. Last Thursday, I did a little bit of a podcast, and it was the Thursday before last. I'm doing the counting wrong, but just after the assassination, I did a podcast where I discussed the Kirk assassination. And right off the bat, as soon as Charlie was hit with the bullet, there were people, the usual idiots, dancing around on TikTok, talking about how they're happy he died. And that's fine. That's not fine. That's horrific. That was expected. I knew that people would be doing that because the left can't help themselves. They're just emotional children. And of course, Destiny and Hassan making complete asses of themselves. Vosh, to a lesser degree, making an ass out of himself. Not that anyone needed a reminder. But I guess I had kind of expected that the more respectable left would try to do something to get on the right side of the issue. I mean, the options were. I mean, okay. I mean, they did have the option, and maybe this is a relic of the old world, but at least 10 years ago, there was the option of kind of downplaying it. This is what I thought the moderate left would do. There was this option of kind of like downplaying the the circumstances just by covering it like an ordinary crime story, and then kind of letting it be a function or a feature of the conservative press. This is something that Red America cares about, and Blue America, we condemn the crime, we condemn violence. Maybe it was even caused by one of us, but we're going to just. We know when something is radioactive, so we're just going to let this one go by the wayside. We're going to let Red America have its bone, and we're going to come back in 2 weeks, and then we're going to pick this back up again, and then we're going to have politics as usual, and that probably would have worked, I think. But I guess this is just the world we live in now. It's a 24-hour. It's a 24-hour news cycle. People say that. I mean, it's a 24-minute news cycle. People check their phones every 24 minutes. And if 2 weeks can go by, and the problem, here's the problem. The problem is that everyone on the left knew who Charlie Kirk was. Everyone on the left knew who Charlie Kirk was. People are saying, okay, why was this different? You look at the leftists on YouTube, right? And they're like, oh, there was an assassination of a politician in Minnesota. This is obviously, they claim this is a right winger. I think that's questionable. This guy was just having delusions about being ordered to kill people, that like something Tim Waltz gave him. It's much more fits the line of just being a lunatic. There was an attack on Paul Pelosi. That one might have been a little bit political. Why is the assassination of Charlie Kirk so much a bigger deal? He wasn't even a member of the government. He was just a podcaster. And this is, of course, this is the problem with modern people generally, but in particular the left, in particular blue staters, this is what they're asking themselves, but they know the answer to this. They know why Charlie is different. I mean, for instance, like Irina Zarutska was in many ways a more brutal killing. If you watch the video, it's more horrific. And what was the reaction to Irina Zarutska's murder in Charlotte? And that happened in August 30th. There was a delay between when that crime happened and when it was reported, and there was no need. The left had the wherewithal to see that and go, okay, we're not biting on this. We're not going to have a big controversy over whether a Ukrainian girl can go onto a light rail, get her throat slit, and then have that be part and parcel of living in a diverse metropolitan area, which is, of course, what their opinion is. But they had the maturity to know that this was not a news cycle that they want to participate in. And for some reason, this is my own naivete. For some reason, I believed that this would be more or less how they reacted to Charlie Kirk, that they would just sit this news cycle out knowing that in about 14 days, which is where we are right now, we're roughly 2 weeks from the event. It was 13 days ago, 12 days ago that Charlie was killed. But, in 14 days, or maybe more like 20 days, people wouldn't have forgotten it, but it would be out of the news cycle, and there would be a more general set of topics that would have better progressive narratives on them. That's how they treated Irina Zarutska. That's not how they treated Charlie Kirk. And the reason why they couldn't do that is, once more, this is the modern world. People check their phones every 24 minutes, 24-minute news cycle. And the thing is that everybody knew Charlie Kirk. The leftists knew Charlie Kirk. He was a fixture in the leftists' mind. None of these other people who died, not even Paul Pelosi. I even come from California. I was vaguely aware that Nancy Pelosi was married because I knew that she had a bunch of kids, which is kind of unusual for a woman from San Francisco. But I knew she had to be married, and so I was disturbed to hear that her husband got attacked. That's terrible. I hope he goes to jail. This psycho, drugged out lunatic who attacked her. Maybe he was influenced by I don't know, Rush Limbaugh or podcasts or whatever. Who knows when people are on that much drugs, which, is its own problem. But either way, like there's no place in my narrative imagination for Paul Pelosi. That's not part of the landscape of my brain. And the thing for the progressives, for the leftists, is not only is Charlie Kirk a part of their world, he is a very, very large part of their world. And this is what's kind of unique about modern progressivism, and it's something that's very unusual. It's not like the progressivism of yesteryear. This is something that if you went back to the 60s or the 70s, even at the height of the leftist insanity there, this would not be the case. But modern progressives, modern leftists, in their imagination, for them, for modern leftists, right-wingers loom very, very large in their imagination. Right-wingers are the people who do things, and left-wingers are people who have things done to them. This is the opposite of past times inside American politics. Typically in American politics, or at least for progressivism's early life in the 20th century, it was the progressive doing something and then the reactionary reacting against that. This isn't the case for modern progressives. In the modern progressive imagination, the right-winger looms larger than any left-winger. So they're more aware of Charlie Kirk than they are of Hassan Piker. They are more aware of Ben Shapiro than they are of Destiny or Vosh. They are more aware of Fox News than they are of the Young Turks. This is just how modern progressivism works, because progressivism is the default and it is the victim and it is the reactionary that acts against them. And for that reason, Charlie Kirk, they probably thought about him more than I do. And I guess that's not really saying very much, because I never thought about Charlie Kirk very much at all. He's just kind of a sideshow for me. I was never a Charlie Kirk fan. But, the thing is that when Charlie Kirk dies, all of a sudden, their story about their lives has changed. A character from their lives has been destroyed. And they can't just have that not be part of the news cycle, because that means that for 2 weeks or for however long it takes, the conservative media will be telling them about a development in the story of their political lives, and the progressive media will not. The progressive media will be, I don't know, covering climate change, which is something that nobody cares about. No progressive really cares about climate change in the way they say they do. And that's another can of worms. But if that were the case, then all of a sudden progressivism itself would seem less relevant. So they had to talk about Charlie Kirk. So the first thing is like, okay, why are we talking about this? There's like the cope. That's the first stage of the leftist reaction. Why does this even matter? A podcaster got shot, whatever. Yes, but not only are Republicans obviously going to talk about it, not only are conservatives going to talk about it, progressives are going to have to constantly talk about it too. And not because they're forced to by conservatives. They're going to have to talk about it because hopefully my connection is right. They're going to have to talk about it because their own audience has had a part of their lives be destroyed. And it might have been a part of their lives that they hated. But there has to be some narrative way to rectify this. So the other way they react to it, kind of predictably, is lying about it. When I talked about 10 days ago on that Addendum podcast, an active theory that was being kicked around was that this guy was a groyper. And, that was kind of an outside chance, but it felt more or less realistic. And so progressives just ran with this. They had to talk about it anyway, because Charlie Kirk, conservative shot by assassin from his own side, is a very narratively cohesive way that they can square this circle. Like I said, all progressives have this person in their imaginations, whether they're communists or whether they're Democrats, and he is a villain in their imaginations. And so, one fitting way that a villain can die is he can be killed by somebody on his own side, or he can be killed by a greater villain. And this can become part of a narrative about how right-wingers are more scary than even we imagined before. But, roundabout Sunday, that narrative possibility had officially closed. And so progressives were stuck with this narrative that needed to be talked about because their audience demanded, and no good story to tell. And so they're just kind of left drifting in that morass. And I guess I don't know what I would do in this situation. It's even hard to think of an equivalent situation, because nobody in the progressive world, I mean, let's say, okay, let's do this. I mean, immediately the first mainstream progressive that sort of picks up in this still of narratives, this limbo that progressive media finds themselves in, is Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he writes for Vanity Fair. And he takes the line that becomes the mainstream moderate line. And the line is like, don't let Republicans whitewash Charlie Kirk. Originally, I think the line was going to be like a gun control line. Like, we need to control these dangerous guns. The problem with the gun control line is that the gun used to kill Charlie Kirk was a bolt action hunting rifle of some caliber. It was this is a very common hunting rifle. There is no way that you could have a gun ban to target this gun without effectively getting rid of all hunting rifles and probably all handguns. There was no actual gun legislative policy that would have stopped this crime from happening. And furthermore, in the case of assassinations, especially assassinations with cells, where there's evidence that these killings are planned in advance for sophisticated, non-insane motives, the idea that you can keep any kind of weapon of lethal force out of people's hands to accomplish this task is ridiculous. As everyone knows who's ever watched Fight Club or read The Anarchist Cookbook, which were two staples growing up in California in the 90s, like, oh, well, I have a copy of The Anarchist Cookbook. The same thing that Tyler Durden said, like, explosives are incredibly easy to manufacture. Anyone can look this up. The Zarnev brothers, who killed like 20 people in the Boston Marathon, created homemade explosives out of pressure cookers. You can go to Target and pick up some of those. These are things, it's not hard for an organized cell of terrorists to obtain things that have lethal force attached to them. This is not difficult to do. And so the gun control line was just a non-starter. And so Ta-Nehisi Coates writes this article. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates, he's a very, I don't know. It's sort of funny because I have actually met Ta-Nehisi Coates. It's kind of a weird story. I met him in Paris once. I just happened to run into him at a restaurant, and I recognized him, and like we just talked for like 20 minutes. Because I was reading his blog, and this is when I was still progressive. So we just like hung out in Paris and talked, like with Ta-Nehisi Coates, just randomly. It's like with a few people who are just like recognized and hung out with, like, because he wasn't even that big of a deal back then. All I knew about him was that he wrote for the Atlantic blogging, the blogosphere on the Atlantic, and I was a blog head back then, back in the old days. And him and Andrew Sullivan and all those guys, and so it was just funny. It was just hilarious encountering that person. But I mean, look, let's be honest about who Ta-Nehisi Coates is. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a somewhat intelligent man, but not altogether that smart. This is someone who's been over promoted significantly beyond his capacities, and he's had way too much put on his shoulders. People wanted this guy to be like the next James Baldwin. People wanted this guy to be the next W.B. Du Bois. People wanted this guy to be the next black intellectual for his time, like the new Cornel West. And he's just not. And all throughout from 2013 onwards, Ta-Nehisi Coates was vested with this kind of imprint of genius, such that white progressives could never read an article by Ta-Nehisi Coates without calling it genius. When it was just like the run-of-the-mill stuff that everyone was talking about with some overwrought, rhetorical devices tossed in, and they act like they never heard an allegory before. Oh my God, the magnitude of his language, the moral witness he brings. I mean, come on, Anyway, the Ta-Nehisi Coates writes the article that everyone copies, and that is Republicans, of course. This is the modern left. So everything that happens has to be like Republicans doing something bad and us reacting to it. And so what bad thing are Republicans doing this week? Well, this week on the Progressive Show, the Republicans, with their twirly masters, they're trying to whitewash the legacy of Charlie Kirk. Look what they're doing. Look what they're doing. Those evil Republicans, they're trying to say good things about Charlie Kirk. Oh, you sneaky little Republican. You thought you were going to say something nice about Charlie Kirk, but we caught you. We caught you before you whitewashed Charlie Kirk, who we all know is a villain. And so the story came to be about how Republicans are whitewashing Charlie Kirk. And of course, what does Ta-Nehisi Coates do? He does what all progressives do. He goes through the entire line of Charlie Kirk's archive of audio. I'm sure AI was used to a certain extent. I'm sure actually that Ta-Nehisi Coates didn't do this research. I'm pretty sure that he just farmed this off of blogs. Maybe farmed it off of blogs via AI too. But either way, he comes to the table and he's just armed with all these little snippets, put in the least charitable interpretation of all of these beliefs into the ether about what a horrible white nationalist Charlie Kirk is. This is, we can't whitewash this white nationalist. This is what the Republicans are pouncing on this opportunity to whitewash the white nationalist. And immediately after that, this has been the cause célèbre of every leftist midwit, because now they have their narrative. The narrative is like Charlie Kirk was a bad guy. And look, it's fine. It's fine that people don't like people, and it's fine that they want to write these articles. I would write articles about. I think I have. I was looking back in my own archive, and in 2021, I did a video called "The Squid and the Whale" about the Vosh versus Charlie Kirk debate. And I said something like, they both come off as really fake to me. Now, look, that was just me speaking honestly about what I thought about Charlie Kirk. I thought that he looked fake, and I thought Vosh looked fake. And yeah, okay, fine, but Charlie Kirk was looking fake because he was overdressed and over-formalized and in that college Republican, very positive mode that kind of, it feels kind of like, I don't know. It feels kind of Mormon coded, if I'm being honest. Pardon me. Got a phone call there. And of course, Vosh's fakeness was covering up like this horrific identity as this person who is this utter sociopath and somebody who's basically a consumer of like horrifically abusive pornography. It's something that, pardon me here, make sure there's no emergency. I don't think so. But what I want to say is everybody can have this moment where they think that Charlie Kirk is not good. They don't like Charlie Kirk's work. Again, I was not a fan of Charlie Kirk. The problem with the left right now is, in all of these midwits that are following Ta-Nehisi Coates, you have to explain to me why you're talking about Charlie Kirk. Why are you talking about Charlie Kirk right now? And that's the context that they're missing. The leftist imagination, they woke up one day, nothing had happened, And then they caught Republicans in the nefarious act of trying to whitewash Charlie Kirk. And now they're debunking it. Like, they're shutting it down because, as we know, all special actions, all assertive actions are naturally bad. And so now we're shutting down this nefarious attempt to whitewash Charlie Kirk. Yeah, but no one's going to forget that the reason why people are sharing all their fond memories of Charlie Kirk is because Charlie Kirk is dead. And Charlie Kirk was murdered. And specifically, Charlie Kirk was murdered by somebody who is all hopped up on these incredibly negative portrayals of Charlie Kirk that they absorb from these media sources. And now all of a sudden, like that context, I mean, this plays. I mean, this goes into a media environment where you have to be totally not cognizant of the fact that Charlie Kirk's body is being buried under plausible assassination by the fans of the people who are writing these articles. It is utterly sociopathic. And the problem is, like, they don't realize how sociopathic this is because they're so certain of their own narrative frame that, and the problem is, it must be apparent because they know why they're writing about him. They know the context. They know that the story does not begin with Republicans whitewashing Charlie Kirk. The story begins with Charlie Kirk getting assassinated because somebody blackwashed him. That's how the story began. And now we're trying to bury this American that got assassinated for having what essentially amounted to normal conservative opinions. Ta-Nehisi Coates' article making claims about his radical white supremacist ideas. I don't know. I mean, look, obviously I probably have more nationalist points of view than Charlie Kirk did. But for all of these little things that are used to denigrate his character, there was somebody who, on Substack, I think it was Dave Dennison, it's kind of very close to one of my old fake names that I used back in the day for blogging. He's a moderate liberal that compiled these claims that appear in Ta-Nehisi Coates' article and others. And he just goes through them all. And if you just read down a little bit further from the quote, you can immediately see that he's not making the claims that are being attributed to him in all of these pushbacks against the Republicans whitewashing Charlie Kirk. It's 100% slander. It is 100% slander. And every single progressive for the last week has just been doing this again and again and again. It's all people want to talk about. And it's amazing how this works because usually this doesn't really affect me that much. I'm kind of very used to the leftist shenanigans. And I guess because it's personal, right? If this had been somebody who's an historical character, then it would be like, okay, this is like an abstract disagreement. Like, I know you're lying. I know you're leaving out evidence like you always do. I know that you're also using these lies and these half-truths to character assassinate me for being on the wrong side of a political disagreement than you. About, I don't know, Carlyle or about Robert E. Lee or whoever, right? These are historical characters. Or conversely, if this was about somebody who was alive, I don't know, like Curtis Yarvin or Lomez or even Nick Fuentes, who knows, right? And I really am not a Nick Fuentes fan. I wish the guy the best, but everyone who knows me knows that I've never been a Nick Fuentes fan at all. Okay, fine. But Yarvin or Fuentes or Lomez or Bronze Age pervert, they're alive. They can defend themselves. This is an active mudslinging battle. And that's fair. Well, maybe not fair. I mean, lying is never fair. But now that leftists have psyoped themselves into believing, because of Ta-Nehisi Coates, and they psyop them. This is also the reason why Ta-Nehisi Coates psyops white liberals into believing that whatever he does is like a good idea. It can be the stupidest shit. I have no idea how he has this amazing power. When I met him like 10 years or like 15 years ago in Europe, I did not feel some kind of weird magnetism, like this huge charisma, right? This is, but if you put something in Ta-Nehisi Coates' mouth, every single moderate white liberal, or even, it's really more the moderate liberals, it's really more the people in the sort of MSNBC college professor orbit, not so much the communists who are in Hassan Piker's audience, but every single kind of college educated progressive. As soon as the idea comes out of Ta-Nehisi Coates' mouth, their brain turns off and it's a good idea. It's a good idea. Like, this is now an acceptable way to process this. But like, they're not thinking like, now not only is it acceptable, it's moral. And not only is it moral, it's not moral not to take this line. It's not moral not to take this line of reasoning. That's why, and so now, and this is the case with all progressives, there's this inability to kind of differentiate greatly if between a false fact or a mistaken fact and an outright lie. This is something that people struggle with. This, progressives and liberals, people from a secular background, really struggle with this. I was on with Nathan Kaufness 4 months ago, 5 months ago. He is a secular right-winger. And we went over why lies are worse, like from all different points of view, than false facts, than mistakes. For 3 hours, I could not get him to acknowledge the qualitative difference of lies over mistakes. For them, it's only about the utility of the thing that is mistaken, right? That's the problem. It's the utility of the mistaken fact, whether it's a lie or an error. There might be a little bit of qualitative difference there, but not a big part. But the whole problem with this is it mistakes the frame is completely off. When we're trying to evaluate between lies and mistakes, while the impact it will have in the real world depends on the nature of the information that's being falsified, or that's being misrepresented, when it comes to the objective impact on reality, that's not what we're talking about when we're evaluating these things in the context of a dialectic. In a dialectic, what we're evaluating is the quality of the characters involved, about how trustworthy this thing is. And if you're evaluating not a fact, but the qualities of a fact teller, then the difference between a lie and an untruth is critical. It's impossible to discount. And progressives have this idea that we're on the right side of history. Like, we have the right ideas. And in service of this right idea, of this crusade, like, it's okay to kind of lie on the edges. It's okay to kind of lie on the edges and tell people and basically assassinate people's characters, because we have like the right talking point, the morally defensible talking point. Now, unfortunately, as progressives psyop themselves with these things, like, they lose track of the fact that character assassinating Charlie Kirk in the context of this moment is not like a proper moral crusade. You can dislike Charlie Kirk, as I have disliked Charlie Kirk. You can say bad things about him, as I have in that video from 2021. I just re-listened to today, and I'm like, whoa, I was really harsh on this guy. God, the guy was only like, the guy must have been 25 years old, and I was just dumping on him, for his like phony affectation in this debate with an absolute psychopath, Vosh. Okay, fine, you can talk down to him. But what makes these articles trying to besmirch the memory of Charlie Kirk so disgusting is they can't justify their own existence. Okay, maybe the death of Charlie Kirk doesn't matter. Maybe he isn't a great guy. But why are you writing this article now? Why is every single progressive writing this article now? And the reason why they're trying to write this article now is they're trying to overpower the well wishes people have for this guy during his funeral. And they're trying to make it seem, in the minds of their audiences, all right that he was assassinated. That is the only reason why these articles exist. And it's transparently clear that they're the only reasons why these articles existed. If Charlie Kirk had died of a heart attack right now, none of these articles would have been written. Ta-Nehisi Coates would not have felt it necessary to write an article about how Charlie Kirk was a bad guy had Charlie Kirk died of a heart attack. If Charlie Kirk had fallen off a cliff, there would be none of these sudden revelations about the whitewashing of Charlie Kirk. The only reason why these articles are being written is so that they can narratively convince themselves that the assassination was, in some sense, necessary, and in some sense, the good side of this conflict, so they can sell it to their audiences. So already, and fine, I kind of figured something like that would happen. Well, I guess I thought it would be a lot less popular than it was, but I knew that it would have to be some kind of minimizing of the magnitude of this murder. But what they don't understand is they think now that this objectively kind of disgusting political maneuver is a morally defensive position that they can take into a conversation. And this is where things really, really, really get disgusting. Because now it's like, I'm on the right side, and the right opinion on the right side is given to me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And because it's Ta-Nehisi Coates, I know it's right and wrong to oppose it. That means telling everyone that Charlie Kirk was a terrible person is a moral action. And because I'm a progressive or a secularist, apparently a lot of people on the right even who share this general worldview of utilitarianism, because I have these utilitarian ethics, now it's okay to lie, explicitly lie. And I had this a few times. And this is what really kicked it off for me. And, everyone gives me shit about going back with these characters like Nathan Robinson and Matt McManus. But when people retweet them, and I can't resist, because I've spoken to these guys on multiple occasions, and I know what their thought process is. And now I see this thing where someone's like, oh, Matt McManus will come out Charlie Kirk was a really terrible person. He's just echoing the same shit from Ta-Nehisi Coates. Now Ta-Nehisi Coates has spoken. Matt hasn't said anything about it to this point. McManus hasn't said anything about it. 10 days later, Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote the article. Oh, the green flag is written. Now we can comment. The coast is clear for the cowards to come out and the vultures to come out and start picking this guy's corpse dry and besmirching his memory while he's being buried. That's what's going on. Okay, fine. He comes out. Oh, Charlie Kirk was a terrible person. And somebody in his comments goes, okay, you didn't like his opinions, but I heard he was a really upstanding guy. And again, lies. Oh, no, he wasn't. I know he wasn't, McManus says. Oh, because he was personally a bad guy? How would you know that? Not, the context is okay, leaving aside the opinions, not the opinions, was he a good guy? McManus, oh, he was a terrible guy, personally, character-wise. I know he wasn't. How do you know he wasn't? McManus, I read his books. I reply, didn't you read the original comment, Matt? The point was, if you leave aside his political opinions, he was still a good guy, a good husband, a good father. He had good character. Reply from McManus, oh, well, I know a bunch of conservatives who did know him personally, and they all say that he was a terrible person. Fuck this shit. That is, first of all, I never knew Charlie Kirk. I didn't even run into him like I ran into Ta-Nehisi Coates. And by the way, I will say this true. When I ran to Ta-Nehisi Coates in Europe, I thought he was a pretty good guy. I don't know. He wasn't he didn't blow me away with his intellect, obviously. He didn't like I didn't think he was particularly charismatic, but he was a pretty chill dude, and it wasn't hard to kind of like share a glass of wine with him. Okay, like that happened, and he was a great guy. If he was my next door neighbor, I would be fine with that. He seemed like a perfectly good guy to go out and have a drink with, which I did. So, there's that. Like I can disaggregate my politics from a discussion on character, right? This is not hard to do. But now we're getting into like levels. Like every person who I've ever talked to who's known Charlie Kirk, and it's not just been this week. I mean, no, people haven't been personally speaking about Charlie Kirk, so I'm kind of like dredging my memories a little bit. But it's well understood from the people who have hung out with Charlie Kirk that he was a very nice, gregarious, and honest person. He made you feel very comfortable to be in the room with him. That is I have never heard anybody who's told me anything different than that. It's not like Nick Fuentes. Like Nick Fuentes, like you might like him, and that's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to criticize you for liking Nick Fuentes, but Nick Fuentes has he has all of these. Half of the friends who's ever known him now hate him. He has a whole lineup of enemies that have come from him alienating and throwing under the bus people that he formerly knew. And some people love him, but a lot of people hate him, and a lot of people will tell you that he's a very unkind person. That's what I would call kind of a mixed reputation. Charlie Kirk did not have a mixed reputation. Every person who worked with him personally has said that he's a very generous and nice guy. And now, in the discussion over Charlie Kirk during the week when he's being buried, all of a sudden, like progressives like Matt McManus have all of these imaginary conservative friends who've come forward with the critical insight into this man's character, and they have told him for public consumption that this guy did not only have bad political opinions, he had a bad character. Fuck this shit. I mean, this is, and I just blocked. I blocked, and for the last 3 days, I've just been blocking people. I can't do this anymore. I can't do this with progressives anymore. It's not lying. It's character assassination. It's deliberately deceiving people to assassinate the character of dead people who can't defend themselves while their family is trying to bury them. Like, fuck this shit. And while your side plausibly has blood on its hands from encouraging this other young guy, Robinson, basically assassinating him to begin with, along with potentially a set of Antifa people in this weird kind of trans commie cult that seems, which, this isn't the first time things like this have happened. There are the Zizians in California. There was the recent shooting at the Annunciation Catholic School. Now, look, I mean, these people are crazy. And it's a stretch to go from, you could say that, like, obviously insanity is higher incident inside the trans community with scare quotes, but inside the cohort of people who self-identify as transgender, mental illness is sky high. So you would expect that they'd be overrepresented in crazy shooters, which they obviously are. But we can just lie. But progressives can just lie. They can lie and lie and lie and lie and lie and lie, and there's never any consequences. And if you catch them, it's like they forget it ever happened. But if they succeed, if Matt McManus succeeded, if he was able to convince everyone that Charlie Kirk was a personally horrible people, not his opinions, he was just a bad man. If he was able to convince people of that, he would be fine with that lie getting out there. But if you catch him on that, like, it's no big deal. Oh, what am I? It's just Twitter, whatever. It's just a book I wrote. Who knows? Like, we don't actually care about this. We don't care that he's dead. All we care about is the political project. And if I reaching out, talking to him, you can go through it several times. Character, not political opinions, not political opinions, not political opinions. This is a statement of character. And it's not just McMass. It's every single one of these progressives. They have no conscience when it comes to this. They'll assassinate people in their own hearts. I mean, and they're working themselves up to justify more violence. That is what this is about. That's the only thing this could be about. That's what we're talking about. Have they disassociated the context of this conversation? The context of this conversation is a leftist just murdered Charlie Kirk because that leftist thought that Charlie Kirk was a terrible person based on no evidence other than this kind of rhetoric. And you're going to like heap on top of that heightened rhetoric that isn't true to begin with, these quotes taken out of context, just straight up lies, manufacturing witnesses that will testify against the character of Charlie Kirk so that you can win a Twitter argument. And again, it's Nathan Robinson, it's Ben Burgess, it's everyone at the Majority Report, it's all of these socialists. They all model themselves like academics, and they all lie and lie and lie and lie and lie. And look, I have no idea if I'm right about anything, really. It behooves me to be humble about my political opinions, but I'll tell you this. I'll tell you that, and I could make mistakes. And you know, when you're in one of these podcasts, when you're doing podcasts like I'm doing right now, and you get very heated like I am right now, all sorts of things come out of your mouth, and they could be incorrect. They could be misrepresentations. You're in a narrative mode. You're saying things, and some critical details fall by the wayside. But I don't just character assassinate someone and then when someone comes in with the correction, just ignore the correction and keep on forwarding the lie. For instance, if someone was to say like, oh, Ta-Nehisi Coates, you forgot that he had this caveat, or you misquote him here, and here, and made it sound less charitable than it would have otherwise, because you were in the heat of moment and you were recalling it from memory. And the Rashomon effect, like my memory is going to fixate on the things that they're moving in the direction of the narrative that I'm telling right here, right? And so I could lose focus on some critical caveat there. I will be honest enough to actually say, okay, like you've got a point there. And maybe what I'm saying isn't as one-sided as I'm trying to portray it here. I have offered that to these people again and again and again and again. And their reaction is like, I don't care, full speed ahead, let's character assassinate this person. With the full knowledge that we're talking about a politically motivated murder that originated in character assassination. And this is the whole idiotic thing here too. And this is the thing that I've said about and had an argument with Aaron about, not a real argument, but like, a group chat disagreement about this. And if people remember from the previous Fiddler's Green podcast, people all right with the setup here. I noticed that my video is a little bit grainy and I like kind of gesturing a lot, and I noticed that I'm hitting my desk and it's wobbling the monitor, and that's because when I moved here, I got a desk that can move up and down, like an ergo desk. And so when I move, it shakes it because it's on a electric motor thing. But anyway, I got kind of in an argument with Aaron. This is a minor disagreement, but people remember from the previous Fiddler's Green podcast, I said, look, like chimping, aka making a big fuss on Twitter, aka populist rabble rousing. This is effective. Like it works. This is the kind of relationship that you're forced to have with politicians inside this dirty, squalid thing that we call democracy. Your best recourse is basically chimping out. But there's like limitations to this, and for that reason, engaging in like right-wing cancel culture, like it's we can't do it, and B, it's not long-term effective. Like it has limitations. Eventually, the elite opinion wins over the long term. And, there was a disagreement back and forth because Aaron McIntyre was going after Jimmy Kimmel. And, arguably, more than anyone else, Aaron McIntyre was the person that got Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air. And for one, I actually applaud this. Ordinarily, you could say something like, oh wow, like this is a joke podcast. This is just people's, like, people are going on hyperbole. For the record, what Aaron went after Jimmy Kimmel for rightfully was Jimmy Kimmel's assertion that MAGA had shot Charlie Kirk. An outright lie, because for 3 days before, we had known from credible sources that this person was almost certainly a leftist and was, if anything, more affiliated with Antifa than MAGA. He might not be affiliated with anybody, but like, just speaking probabilistically. So this was an outright lie. And you're like, okay, well, comedians lie all the time. Yeah, okay, great. But like, the context here, I know, what is this lie supposed to accomplish? This lie is supposed to accomplish the idea that right-wingers are violent and they're responsible for the crime, and that they're fitting targets for more crime like this. That this shooting is in some sense justified. That's the reason for this joke. That's why Jimmy Kimmel is saying what he does. And for that, yeah, absolutely. Take this guy off the air, take him down. And all throughout the blogosphere for the last week, oh my God, the greatest martyr of free speech is Jimmy Kimmel. I mean, leaving aside the fact that now we know that this cancellation wasn't complete, some of the networks that Jimmy Kimmel was on are bringing him back. I don't know what to say. I mean, just today also we got the news that YouTube had been censoring an enormous number of right-wing channels, maybe including this one, through throttling, but more prominently just by decommissioning them, just by banning them. Obviously, I can think immediately of my friend the Franklin, who I think might be out of the podcasting business altogether, and Millennial Woes, who's still on Substack, who hosts me on Millennial. And we've had massive disagreements about nationalism for as long as I've known him, for 6 years, and we quibble about this stuff all the time. Just unceremoniously, his career on YouTube was just ended for no reason, for no terms violations. And YouTube just admits it, and what? They expect to get away with it. And you have these thoughtful left-wingers like Freddie DuBois, someone who I actually respect, mainly because he's a good writer, and he's also unafraid to call out his own side. And his reaction is like, oh my God, this is the right going too far, because the FCC got involved in this cancellation. The chairman of the FCC put pressure on ABC to take out Jimmy Kimmel and make his cancellation complete. And this is this is a dark day for free speech in America. I mean, we have evidence of Jimmy Kimmel telling jokes that got Douglas Mackey put in jail. I think of just last year, Jimmy Kimmel was telling jokes about how Trump supporters should vote on the wrong day. When Douglas Mackey made the exact same joke, he went to jail. And he was just exonerated yesterday. But Jimmy Kimmel tells that joke, and he's America's sweetheart for a year, despite the fact that he's got no following, he's got no viewership. This entire industry of late night is dying. I have no, and Freddie, I call him out on this. I call him out on the fact that every single thing that he's complaining about had been done for years and years and years and years and years against right-wingers. And his reply was, well, I called it out then too. When it happened. I've always been against cancel culture. Yes, Mr. DuBois, you did call it out, and that's why I read you, and that's why I consider you one of the last good leftists that I can actually talk to. But that's not the problem we're dealing with here right now. The problem we're dealing with here right now is if the idea is, the two positions are left-wing cancel culture versus no cancel culture. So this is how the dialectic wins, how the dialectic works. When the left wing wins, they get cancel culture, and all of their opponents get fired for offenses that everyone is guilty of. When the right wing wins, nobody gets fired for their political opinions. What's wrong with this equation? What's wrong with this equation? The left never has any consequences. The right always has consequences. So you go between a left-wing bias system and a ostensibly fair system. There's no response, because that would involve an understanding of politics that the left wing just does not want to actually entertain, an understanding of political realism. There has to be a right-wing cancel culture. And I find it absolutely disgusting. And it ultimately isn't, how you get a victory. And this is, I shouldn't say this, because if you have the opportunity to fuel the campaign to get Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air, do it. And the reason is, and it's not because I think that this is a good state of affairs. I would prefer for there to be no cancel culture. This is just a matter of safety at this point. The Charlie Kirk assassination is a gun pointed at the heads of every single pundit that comments from a right-wing perspective. And the media class right now, not like Hassan or Vosh or Destiny, the mainstream media class is trying to bury this. They're trying to bury it. They're trying to justify it. They're trying to make it seem like it was all right. They're trying to blame their political opponents for an assassination that their people did, the people that they influenced did. If you allow this to go on and there's no consequences, there will never be consequences to anything. Of course there will be copycats for the assassin of Charlie Kirk. They're already in the process of lionizing him. And unless we can get the moderate left on board with treating this assassination seriously, and to this point I've only seen Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian actually make some kind of effort to get on the right side of this. Unless we can actually get the moderate left on board with having some kind of consequence for outright lying to cover for these people, I don't know what the recourse is. I mean, just 2 days ago before they reinstated Kimmel, somebody at a local affiliate right next to my town decided to just shoot up the ABC local affiliate broadcaster because of Kimmel. And the guy is, this guy is some kind of ex-hippie. I didn't read up on this, but this is like a 65-year-old guy. Just these old people getting put into apoplectic rage over this. And this is the moment we're at here. And this is why it's so critical. And this is why we can't talk about anything other than the Charlie Kirk assassination and the aftermath. It's really simple. Why can't Jimmy Kimmel get canceled? Initially, the idea was, well, they were trying to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel anyway. He had bad ratings. Nobody watched him. His audience was geriatric. So everyone in the elite section of the Democratic Party, all the power players wanted to get rid of Kimmel anyway. And when the chimp out started on the right, he was an easy person to throw under the bus. And then the reinstatement was because of all of these boomers who were just like emotionally incontinent idiots. They had their Kimmel taken away. They were tired of watching Keith Olbermann justify Charlie Kirk getting murdered and saying how Charlie Kirk is burning in hell for some reason. I guess for having the politically wrong opinions. And the boom and then the boomer spurg out, the boomer chimp out beat the right wing chimp out. I don't think that's what happened with the reinstatement of Kimmel, and he's not completely reinstated. Aaron McIntyre was able to get him permanently taken off a few syndication networks, which I guess is a victory. It's a bloody nose for the left, certainly. Not that I think Jimmy Kimmel is going out permanently. But I think people are wrong when they think that elite leftist opinions wanted to get rid of Kimmel because he wasn't doing well in the ratings. If I were a leftist, I would fight like hell to make sure Jimmy Kimmel kept his job. Because you're not fighting for Kimmel, you're fighting for your own moral invulnerability. The idea, and the thing that these boomer leftists are so absolutely apoplectic about, the idea is that there is a moral infraction that a left-winger can be guilty of by following the precepts of leftism. Left-wingers can be guilty in the left-wing imagination, but they can only be guilty by being not good leftists. Jimmy Kimmel was being a good leftist. Running down Charlie Kirk was being a good leftist. Being an anti-fascist is being a good leftist. And in the cause of leftism, no person can be seen publicly as being morally reprehensible or suffer moral hazard from one of their actions taken as part of the left-wing apparatus generally. That cannot happen. That cannot happen because if that happens, that means that the left no longer has a monopoly on morality. That you can be on the left side of a political issue and still be on the morally wrong side of a political issue. And once that happens, the entire logic of the left starts falling apart. I don't know exactly where I am in this conversation. I'm done with the left. I don't even know what to say anymore. I really don't. Some leftists reached out for a debate or a conversation on Charlie Kirk. I said, okay. And then as opposed to kind of like clearing my schedule, I just kind of left it at that. I mean, what am I supposed to say at this stage? I just have no idea what I'm supposed to say. It's not a disagreement. I mean, they could be a communist. They could be an anarchist. They could hate religion. They could be a weird transhumanist. Who knows? But it's just I can't trust them because everything they say is an affectation. It's a lie. It's part of this weird performance we're putting on. And so when I'm talking to a leftist, I'm not really talking to anybody like another side. I'm just talking to kind of this repetition of weird talking points. And I don't know what am I supposed to do with that? Everyone in America, I mean, and it's not just right-wingers who are feeling this way. I think that the left really misstepped on the Charlie Kirk assassination thing because now everyone is looking at progressives in 2025 and they look like a pack of ghouls. They just look like an absolute pack of ghouls. Just trying everything they can possibly do to besmirch the reputation of somebody who, from all accounts, was a great person, other than the fact that he happened to be conservative. And the time and the place doesn't matter. The veracity of the claims doesn't matter when they're taken out of context and people are saying that he meant things that he obviously didn't mean. The fact that half the country believes the things they find so objectionable doesn't matter. The fact that by implication, their justification of violence or their justification of absolute total moral disregard for this person, which is what you would need to have these kind of hit pieces go out on the day the guy's being buried. That essentially means that like you have no moral regard for a majority of the country who's not an orthodox leftist. You either grant the left complete monopoly on the moral framework of society. Leftism cannot fail. It can only be failed. It is God. Or you're some category of deplorable that has no moral worth, that will not be mourned, and that which hit pieces can be written about you and published that misrepresent your ideas, that can be lied about and run down and besmirched to their family on the day of their burial. That is the moral regard that progressives apparently have. I mean, they're demonstrating this for all of the country that does not share in their worldview. Pluralism, my ass. I'm not so sure what there is to say anymore, and I think that everyone can see this. What America is struggling with right now is it's this weird thing. It's kind of like this weird game theory operation. Maybe I liken it arbitrage. We've got two things that cannot possibly happen. First of all, we can't live in a society that's completely immoral or that only has procedural morality. And so one side or the other is going to have to win. They're going to have to win the game, and they're going to have to be the morality that rules America. The problem is that both sides are absolutely incapable of winning. They're incapable of winning because they're both deeply, deeply flawed. And I think the left is deeply flawed in a way that the right is not. Well, I mean, you could go over it. I think I wrote a list out here. I wrote a list out of the right wing. What are so if I'm saying, okay, let's see, what would it take? Let's say discourse is dead officially from this moment forward, and we're only talking about what it would take for this religion called, well, the broad umbrella of religions that we would call right-wing equality. But you could see this in Red America. And whether you're Mormon or Protestant or Catholic or some Muslims even qualify for this. But you know what the right wing is, and these kind of what the C.S. Lewis called the Tao, the traditional morality in line with most of our ancestors believed, with some minor modern modifications. What are the real strengths? If we just regarded this as a religion that was vying for control over the government, what are the advantages of the right as a belligerent force? And I wrote up these things. And the first thing it has going for it, the first thing the right has going for it, is that it's lindy. It has a quality to it that all of the right-wing morals are time-tested. I am known for saying a lot of controversial things on this channel, but nothing I say on this channel was not believed by a majority, if not all, of my ancestors, with the possible exception of my parents. This is just what people believe. This is what humans have believed. This is what has allowed them to survive on Earth to this point. And although modernity changes the game in certain critical ways, the possibility that all of these precepts are wrong, or that a random change is likely to make them more wrong than it is the immediate alternatives, is very, very unlikely. This is a statistical property of uncertain systems, and random effects is that based on the survival of something, even in a totally random environment, the viability of it in the past is the best evidence for the viability of it in the future. The second big advantage of right-wing ideas is that they actually have a coherent ideology. This is, I think, the big problem with leftism in the modern world, is it can't do discourse because its ideas are just so... Insane's the wrong word. Incoherent. I want to look for is there a good synonym for incoherent? Because I can't think of one. But maybe to say incoherent, right? These are ideas that don't fit together. They're focus group. They're designed to be things that make you sound good, that appeal to a certain audience, that bring in social applause, but they don't fit together right. A great example of this is the left-wing attitude towards gender and sex relations. You talk to a feminist for 20 minutes and you bring up any of the modern problems that young people have with dating and mating in the modern world that both men and women complain about, and they will contradict themselves within 5 minutes. And there's just so many basic questions that they do not have answers for. And this is, Andrew Wilson and the rest of the debate bro crowd. I mean, this is something that was people were doing way, way, way back in 2018 with the whole internet blood sports phenomenon. But people keep on doing this. It's not hard to win a debate against a left winger if you hold frame. If you hold frame, as a matter of fact, you're almost guaranteed to win against a left wing opponent because their ideologies is so full of contradictions. I mean, I guess is it so important to have a coherent ideology? I mean, I guess maybe not. I think sometimes we put a little bit too much stock in coherency. But the thing about what coherence does allow you to do is it allows you to go into a conversation with somebody else and be an honest witness to your own moral system and not have to be afraid of being exposed as like a crazy person. I'm Catholic, and I can't guarantee you that Catholicism is right because the arguments for Catholicism are dependent on certain historically contingent assertions about what happened in the past and certain metaphysically contingent propositions about the nature of the universe. And I cannot verify the nature of those propositions metaphysically or historically. So it's possible that Catholicism is untrue. It is coherent though. The ideas do not contradict each other. And I can go into a conversation with Catholic morality and have a perfectly fine back and forth. And I don't have to be worried that I'm going to just display a complete inability to talk about ideas in a way that doesn't make me look like an idiot. I'm not going to be like a feminist and say that I want men and women to make equal amounts of money, but men, all women need a man that's better than they are. I mean, feminists don't say that, but they don't say that in their writing. But if you get one speaking long enough, they will say that. And that has happened to me many times. Yeah. And I think another advantage of the right is just the fact that its ideas lead to good outcomes. That's the whole strength of Charlie Kirk. The real image that I think a lot of men responded to was the fact that at a relatively young age, at 31, he had a beautiful wife and 2 beautiful children. And this is the story with pretty much everyone that I've seen. I have a few friends who are progressive and have children, even radically progressive and have children. I know about 3 or 4 couples like that. But if I were just to take all of the families that I know, and then I was to count the kids from all of the families that I know, 80-90% of them would be from the conservative Catholic families, and maybe 10% would be from the progressive secular ones. There's just such a difference in how these worldviews actually produce things in the real world, like families, and it's just impossible to ignore. And I think this reason, another advantage is this attracts a lot of very energized young men, and I don't think anything really gets done without those young men. Now, the disadvantage of the right is that it's functionally excluded from all institutional representation. The entire government is essentially designed to keep right-wingers out of managerial positions. And the way that it does that is it makes the university system and university credentialing the main way that people get accolades and the main way that people enter into managerialism. And at this point, the university is a progressive seminary through and through, and they will actively deny opportunities. This is not, people always suspected this, right? But as per disclosures that have come out in the light of these affirmative action lawsuits that were brought to the Supreme Court, and numerous articles looking into this, and also people who've worked inside publishing and academia and government hiring and even hiring inside the tech world, there have just been numerous opportunities that are just outright denied to people who meet demographic profiles that would suggest that they are not a profile that would be progressive. They're white, they're straight, they're male, they have the wrong non-HR approved opinions, bottom of the heap. The right also has a problem with the fact that it can't organize itself very effectively. And a lot of this just has to do with the world we live in. We live in a multicultural world that is everything is falling apart and nothing is solid. And, there's entrepreneurs always say, oh, we need to move fast and break things. That was from the 2000s, but it might as well have been a slogan that was popular in the 90s because it really captures the attitude of Silicon Valley. We're gonna move fast and break things. Yes, but if you destabilize absolutely everything, then people stop moving. And the problem is that the right wing would be able to use its kind of Promethean energy a lot better if it had some way to kind of locate itself inside a constant identity. And in the modern world, it doesn't have that. The modern world is multicultural, and the right has a hard time conceptualizing itself in a multicultural space. The modern world is in constant entropy, and norms are constantly falling apart. And so even the kind of ethical way of phrasing right-wing ideas has problems there as well. So, it is a creature that is in some ways very adapted ideologically to deal with postmodernity, in the sense that it's coherent, it's energetic, it's aggressive, it is fully postmodern and not that fake way that progressives are. It fully rejects modernity, and it's able to perceive the universe much more accurately than progressives are. But anthropologically and socially speaking, the condition of modernity hurts it more. And that, combined with, I think, the real critical problem is that the boomers are against the right. And I think this is just a takeaway that we have to deal with eventually. But I'll more on that later, I suppose. Well, I mean, here's a good example. We'll do this now. How do I do this delicately? The celebration of life for Charlie Kirk. Let's say the good things about it. Phenomenal turnout. It looked amazing. Christianity and faith were central to the proceedings, which was absolutely, in my opinion, chef's kiss. I can't compliment them enough for doing that. A lot of the speeches were good speeches. If I were just to hear them, if I was to tune in on a YouTube channel and hear those speeches, those would be good speeches. Those would be very good speeches in the abstract. And, let's give credit to Red America where credit is due. It was thrown, this massive event was put together in a very short notice. And red staters know how to get things done. I think that it would have taken California twice as long. Like the Democratic Party would probably have to take twice as long to put together an event like this. For a similar figure. Like, say if Ta-Nehisi Coates was assassinated. Let's say Ta-Nehisi Coates was assassinated by like a Ku Klux Klan member. And, everyone would show up for the Ta-Nehisi Coates funeral. Let's say Barack Obama is president. Barack Obama is going to speak about Ta-Nehisi Coates or whatever when he's carried off, and there's tons of people want to come. It would have taken Blue America probably twice as long to put this on. Very, very effective in that regard, too. The speeches were great. The audience was amazing. And it also looked, and this is part of my critique, it looked like a really fun party to be at. So it's God. There's no way I'm gonna really myself over. I'm really going to. How can I not end my YouTube career by reviewing this hard truth? How can I put this delicately? Charlie Kirk's assassination was a moment in history. It was a moment in history. And it was a moment in which our current ruling class had been completely discredited and humiliated. Now, Red America had an event, and everyone was looking at this event. This is the event. This is Charlie Kirk's funeral. What kind of event is this going to be? I don't want to be. I feel there's no way I can put this in a non-cold way. This event, everyone knew this, and I think Trump knew this too. This event was a political event. Let's not lie about that. This was not a personal funeral, although it was personal for a lot of people and personal for myself. We all knew Charlie Kirk, parasocially, right? I didn't know him actually. I never met him even. We all knew Charlie Kirk parasocially. Everyone wanted to pay their regards. They were deeply affected. The tears were real. But this was Trump and Vance were speaking at this. Tucker Carlson was speaking. This is a political event. This is a political party. And Blue America is looking at this party. And the question is, and you're a Blue American, you're in the moment feeling a little bit humiliated. And the question is this a party that I want to be part of? I've long recognized as somebody who used to throw parties, and, I know that Curtis Yarvin got a lot of flack for his whole Hobbits versus Dark Elves thing. And Blue America are absolutely ghouls. They are soulless ghouls of the highest order. There are just absolutely disgusting people at this stage of historical development. I want absolutely nothing to do with them. And I had nothing to say to progressives anymore. I'm still friends with a lot of them. We won't talk about politics ever. And I'm even wondering how long that's going to last. Because I've lost a lot of friendships so far based on politics. And we'll see if that even cannot be an issue. When I was in college, I used to throw parties for me and my friends. And I used to say back then, kind of mirroring Mencius Moldbug, the Lord of the Rings films were out. And I said, there are Hobbit parties and there are Gondor parties, right? It's kind of ironic that it matches the Hobbits versus Dark Elves thing that Yarvin was so infamously famous for writing about in that one article. But I guess history rhymes, right? And I said, I like Hobbit parties. Hobbit parties are parties you put on for the people at the party. The point of the party is to have a good time at the party. Like it's to grill and chill. It's to have a good fun kicking with your friends. I always like Hobbit parties. I've never put on a Gondor party in my life. So you see when the Hobbits are partying at like Bilbo's birthday party, they're eating a ton. There's fireworks everywhere. If it was this was Bilbo's wake and not Bilbo's 111th birthday party, there still would be a ton of food and fireworks and all this stuff. It would be a celebration of life, right? You can imagine that, right? And that's a party for the people there. Go to Gondor, Minas Tirith. The most joyous celebration is being rolled out. The coronation of King Aragorn, and that's not his actual name as a king. I forget what his kingly name was. He takes a new name as a king. I just read the books. I can't remember what his king name was, but Aragorn is being crowned king of Gondor. This is the most joyous celebration. And you are in the middle of a party. This is a Gondor party. Gondor parties do not exist for the purposes of making everyone feel good who's there. As a matter of fact, most of those lords and ladies sitting at the base of the white tree, probably for hours, and like all of their finery, it's probably super uncomfortable to be there. Someone says it's King Elisar. Yes, King Elisar. That's gone. That is Aragorn's kingly name. The Gondor party's purpose is to make a point. It's to make a point about what is sacred and what is profane. And it's to make a point about what we should celebrate and what we shouldn't. It's to mark the changing of the seasons. It's a solemn religious ritual, and this is where it kind of intersects with modern kind of like blue state dinner parties. Like, ever go to like a blue state dinner party? Like, I've been to a number of like dinner parties. Like, there's actually less dinner parties in my 30s than there was in my 20s, which is really ironic, right? But most of these dinner parties, people making these like really fancy gourmet things, and like you talk about the same things, and it's not very fun. It's like a formality. Like, we're kind of like doing the elite adult thing that blue staters do here. But even that, it's kind of like a Gondor party, right? The point is that you are demonstrating that the people in this party have a certain office, are fulfilling a certain religious obligation for the collective, and funerals are like this too, for the old-fashioned way. In the old-fashioned conception of funerals are supposed to be these kind of Gondor parties. Of course, there are hors d'oeuvres. Of course, there are people try to make it as pleasant as possible for the guests. But as opposed to when you look at a Hobbit party, you go like, oh my God, I really want to be there because I want to have all that fun that's there. Like, it would be really cool to be there and kicking with all the guys. That would be really fun. Looking at a Gondor party, you're like, oh man, I wish I was there. I wish I was there because of the historical significance of that event. Or even better, I wish I was there because I'm ashamed to have missed it. I feel ashamed to have missed this party, to be seen as a person who went to this party. It could be the most dreary, uncomfortable thing imaginable. Everyone could be in sackcloth and ashes, whipping themselves over the death of Thomas Becket. And you're like, oh my God, to my eternal shame, I missed the funeral of St. Thomas of Becket. And I missed the opportunity to smear ashes on my face and to lash my flesh and to mark the occasion where this historical event has happened. Red America can't throw Gondor parties. It just can't. I just can't. I watched Charlie Kirk's on and off. I was busy, but I watched the proceedings. I watched the celebration of life. I kind of wished I was there to hear the speeches, to meet the people, to network. But let me tell you, nobody in Blue America felt ashamed not to be there. And the optics of it communicated the idea that the point of this party was not to inaugurate a new feeling of a new political order, or it was not to kind of like mark the death and to kind of like take responsibility for how much, like, you didn't need to be there. Like, why weren't you at Charlie Kirk's funeral? Imagine, like let's just use the example that I previously used. Imagine that during the Obama administration, Ta-Nehisi Coates got assassinated by a Ku Klux Klan member and was being buried in Washington, D.C., or, I don't know, Baltimore. I have no idea where Ta-Nehisi Coates is from. I assumed he's somewhere from the East Coast. What would that funeral look like? The mood of the funeral would be not fun, not like a rally. It would feel like some event that if you were a certain person in power, you would be ashamed not to be there. And it's arguable that, while Red America has lost the ability to put on Gondor parties, Blue America has lost the ability to put on Hobbit parties. Almost every party that has involved progressives that I've ever been to has been incredibly, incredibly, incredibly uncomfortable and about posturing. And arguably, Blue America has forgotten about how to have a good time. But the problem is that this act of humiliation on the part of our current ruling class, it left a power vacuum. How possible is it for the young men who are following in the footsteps of Charlie Kirk? How possible is it for a young man following in the footsteps of Charlie Kirk to become the new ruling class that replaces people like Ta-Nehisi Coates or the people from the New York Times? And the message that this event sent was, we are very, 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 very far away from it. We have big conventions for celebrations of life, not solemn funerals. The celebration looks like a megachurch. We have people making, Tucker Carlson's speech was very, very good, but it was weird and it was totally unsuited for a funeral. I did not feel like when I was burying Charlie Kirk, like we were in a moment where I'm laughing about how the Sanhedrin couldn't kill Christ. I felt more like I was in the Garden of Gethsemane. So the speeches were very tone deaf. I think Erica Kirk actually did the best job. She gave the speech that felt like a speech that you'd be ashamed to not clap for. Some cringe pagan people were saying, "Oh, she forgave the killer." They don't even understand like the language she was using, and it's ridiculous to debate these people at this stage. But this was not something that, as a ruler, I would feel ashamed not to attend. This felt like the JV side of America hoping they could be a ruling class and not being there yet. But I wonder if they don't have the better side of it, because now we get to the left wing's strengths and weaknesses. Why is the left wing not winning? It's like that scene from Red Dragon. If I'm smarter than you, then how did you catch me? You had disadvantages. Why? What disadvantages? You're insane, Hannibal Lecter. Yes, the left wing advantages are they're basically in charge of all the institutions. And the boomers just give them money. They just give them money. And they give them money to basically do nothing but to cannibalize the old world. Left-wingers don't need to worry about entropy increasing, at least in the short term, because they're not really demoralized when civilization collapses. As long as there's more people to victimize and more people to go after, and as long as the oppression narrative can be maintained, they don't care that Baltimore is ruins. They don't care that Charlotte, North Carolina has a higher civilian death toll than the Ukraine does. As long as you can blame the condition of Charlotte, North Carolina on evil white people and get a payout for it, then you're good to go. You're good to go. Who cares? And furthermore, because their mode is extractive, they don't need to worry about multiculturalism. Anti-whiteness is a language the world can understand. You take Africans and Indians who hate each other, and Chinese, they all hate each other, and you tell them that they're all victims of imperialism and that Whitey owes them something. And now we're gonna take back what the horrible imperialists took for us, and all of a sudden, all of those groups are voting on the same side for completely different reasons. But the problem is that, as is apparent for the last 5 years, is that the left is an absolute incoherent mess. Nothing about it makes sense. I wrote an entire article on this like 2 months ago, back in early August, late July. How leftism died, I think I called it. And I just go through, it's a really long article. Every single thing, like nothing about the leftist story makes sense in the context of the modern world. It's completely incoherent. And it just has this nature to it. And I guess that's the more damning thing about it too. In addition to kind of being incoherent ideologically speaking, aside from the people who got rich, everybody who kind of ended up as middle class. So there's two categories of people I know. There are people who made good on Silicon Valley or in academia at an elite level, and they're doing great as a leftist living in Berkeley or Princeton, New Jersey, What's the place? Victoria, BC, all the places that I've lived. I guess I technically haven't lived in Berkeley. Technically. Those people have done good. The people in Princeton, New Jersey, who are leftists, have done good. But all the people who fell short of like those elite positions, their lives are utter messes. I don't know any leftists in my group that are at a lower middle class income, that kind of like what used to be kind of the American dream tier of this country. They're all living lives that are totally broken. They're shuttered by drugs, divorce, weird sexual deviations, gender ideology. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And of course, they have almost no children at that level. This just creates like this manifest feeling of weakness. This cannot be the ruling class. Like, you're rich. If you follow the ruling ideology, you're either rich and a self-hating rich person that's trying to like dethrone themselves, or you're a supporter of the ideology and have actively made a dog's breakfast out of almost the rest of your life. Those appear, and the leftists are completely bimodally distributed in this regard. And the real problem is that this prevents them from actually seeing reality as it is. Let's look at the first problem. The first problem that all leftists are looking down right now. I think this is the reason too why they can never actively repair their problems. Okay, so you can do multiculturalism. You can do multiculturalism by blaming whitey, by blaming the Christian straight white man who lived in the 19th century and that colonized the world and who's everyone's very, very angry about. And that unifies people. And this gives you that nice little heat map. So you go to, this is a famous study done on Yuri Bezmenov, not the actual Yuri Bezmenov, but a blogger of the same name. Yuri Bezmenov is reposting this. So this was a moral study done by how people weigh the moral importance of various things. So people put the relative caring they had somewhere on the list of concentric circles. So on the interior of the circle, you have things like friends, family, blood relations. Then you have people in your town or in your or in your church. Then in your religion generally, or your nation. And then the outer rungs, you have like the world, all animals, the universe and everything, blah, 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 right? Well, how conservatives view morality is that they place the highest moral weights on the interior of the concentric circles. So they feel the best towards friend and family, and then more antipathy going outwards, like normal people do. Whereas progressives inside this ideology, and this is sort of misinterpreted by conservatives a lot, they say like, oh, well, they like rocks more than their own family. That's not what this graph represents. When they put the high marks on the outer circles, they mean that they value the rocks and the animals equally to the people inside their children and their families. Like, everyone has equal value, right? So they're not saying that they value rocks and meteorites and rats more than their children, just the same as their children, right? And this creates this kind of like inverted heat map that you see in this famous study. This also is what creates this great opportunity for progressive 21st century multiculturalism. And in my article, How Progressivism Died, and I don't mean that leftism is going to die, because leftism is chaos, and chaos is indestructible. There will be new forms of leftism that come up. But when we talk about like 19th and 20th century progressivism, the kind of leftism that we've all known and loved, and that, we've seen kind of explode in wokeness, this is what's dying, and you can see it dying on this diagram. So when you have that sort of inverted heat map that you see on the right there, this creates an opportunity for multiculturalism, because you can have self-hating whites give all their money to every other group, and they have all the excess wealth, and because of that, you can create a coalition of people who benefit from leftism. Self-hating whites, which were the majority of the coalition, and then there are minority client allies. Patron, client. Perfect politics. The problem is, the fundamental instability of this system is that inside this red dot here that has all of the altruism that you see in the progressive coalition, there are tiny little tumors of the same right-wing pattern emerging inside ethnic minority particularism. Hyper-nationalism among Muslims, among Hindus, among Asians, among African Americans. And all of these bubbles just consume until there's no more white progressive masochists willing to play the game, and the whole thing collapses. Or they have to come up with a new realm of victims. This whole apparatus of 20th century progressivism is an unstable system. It is in the process of dying. It can't even communicate. Can't even communicate with the outside world. I was kind of just really appreciating all of these memes. There's, I say the leftism, the left can't meme. This is my favorite one I saw here. Like, this is a big left-wing account, had tons and tons and tons of of retweets, and it's like, "Good morning, Charlie Kirk is officially 7 days fentanyl free." This is an inversion of a George Floyd AI meme where it's George Floyd is, I know, a year after his death, right? He was high on, and that's because he died high on fentanyl. But Charlie Kirk didn't die on fentanyl. He's not a fentanyl user. Everyone knows he wasn't a fentanyl user. So it's just like, oh, what, you did funny meme? Let me insert funny meme and funny meme back at you. The other one I really liked, I couldn't find it in time for this live stream, was somebody, they canceled Jimmy Kimmel, and this was the NBC meets the Wojak, where the Wojak, someone gets canceled, like Tucker Carlson gets canceled, and then the Chad goes up to the NPC and says, Tucker Carlson was the moderate option. And then, they'll just look, oh my God, that's such a powerful meme. Let's invert it. Let's invert the meme. Let's invert the meme. And so they have Jimmy Kimmel gets fired, and you have the NPC with the MAGA hat on to let you know that this NPC is a Republican, right? So we have the right signaling down, right? The NPC is the bad guy, so we need to make clear that the NPC is a Republican. And then you have the Giga Chad character. They use the same like square-jawed blonde guy as their good guy character in their memes, which is obviously taken from right-wingers. Left-wingers don't believe that good guys are square-jawed, ripped blonde dudes, who have like heterosexual stoic demeanors. They don't believe that, but that's what the meme format is. So the Chad guy goes over and says to the MAGA NPC, Jimmy Kimmel was the moderate option. And, the MAGA guy is quavering, oh my God, now that we got rid of Jimmy Kimmel, just imagine what radicalism could be in store for us. They're going to really, really bust out the radical violence now. And every Republican's like, yeah, no shit, Jimmy Kimmel was a moderate option. You literally shot Charlie Kirk 4 days ago. You forget that? You forget when you guys killed Charlie Kirk? Like, are you aware of outside reality? This is one of my favorite ones too. This is a right-wing meme that's an inversion of the left-wing meme. So this is an immediately, and this gives you a great window into how the left-wing memes and the right-wing can't. So this is a left-wing meme format, and now they actually so this is a template that the left uses. And in the left imagination, it's like right-wing extremism. I want to murder black people. And like left-wing extremism, like you have this kind of like androgynous, young character. This is how all progressives imagine themselves. Like, they're just a kid. They're just a teenager. Like, they're totally androgynous. Like, they're just like this fresh-faced teenager. And I just want equality for people. And this inversion is perfect because it just walks into that irony. You have Charlie Kirk. I debate college students. And he's like some kind of bloodthirsty ghoul. And the left-wing extremism is, I shoot up Catholic schools when children are attending mass. And the reason what makes this so funny is you just know for a fact that the shooter at the Charlie Kirk rally who killed the man saw himself as just this guy right here, and he saw Charlie Kirk as just that kind of demonic ghoul on the left-hand side. And all we're doing is just putting plain language on what everyone is saying. And this is the biggest advantage, is that the progressives can't interface with plain language descriptions of reality anymore. And this kind of gets us back to Kimmel. I mean, like, why was it so important that Kimmel not get canceled? And it's because, like, everything, what's kind of keeping the left in power. I listed off all of these advantages of the left wing. They have the ability to survive multiculturalism. They have institutional power. The boomers give them money. They can throw parties that people are ashamed not to attend, and not just one that people want to be at because they're fun. All of those things are immaterial. I mean, they're nice to haves. Obviously, the multiculturalism advantages won't last, because eventually everyone is going to balkanize into their own ethnocentric communities. The institutional powers aren't going to last. And, while some people on the left can still throw parties that you'd feel jealous for not being able to attend, that power is radically diminishing in the last 3 years in particular, especially after COVID. COVID really killed progressives' ability to socially organize in any meaningful way. The people who have the free time to be activists are all of these, like, emotionally broken people, broken by the progressive lifestyle itself. And the people that are better off are kind of just living bourgeoisie lives and not really doing this whole bohemian thing anymore like the boomers did. But speaking of boomers, that is the left's last advantage. The last advantage of the left is that the boomers consider them the default winners. The left always wins. The left always wins. The leftists can do wrong things, but they can't do wrong things as leftists. They can only do wrong things as people. They can only fail leftism. Ultimately, the boomers are the last support structure of leftist dominance. When that falls away, who knows what's going to happen? Now, is Red America ready to fill those shoes? Obviously not. They need to do a lot of work before they get to anything that looks like it feels like a natural replacement. But the boomers are really the thing that's keeping the left wing up. In all this last month, I've just seen all of these protests, and the protests are geriatric. It's all of these old people. And Bennett's phylactery, aka Kevin Dolan from the Exit Group, he had this really good insight. Boomers have this, I'm just quoting his tweet here, they had the same problem as post-op transsexuals. Their lives make no sense if their primary delusion is discredited or becomes uncool. And so they'll keep on supporting the left. And moreover, the most important thing that they can support from the left are these icons of immortality. And so, nobody watches Jimmy Kimmel other than Xers, and like Xers are pretty old right now. They're in their 50s and 60s, and boomers in their 70s. Like the boomer coalition watches Jimmy Kimmel. Like that is what has happened like that, and not very many of them do. But in the boomer world, Jimmy Kimmel cannot lose his position for being a leftist. So maybe they'll take him off the air later for ratings reasons. But in order for the boomer delusion to be maintained, which they will do anything to maintain because their entire life will lose its meaning if it's not, Jimmy Kimmel has to be uncancelable in the ways that matter. Maybe he's taken off the air for some reason having to do with metrics. The money wasn't there, those evil capitalist bastards. He cannot be taken off the air because he told a lie in the service of the left-wing cause. That cannot happen because that would morally discredit the left. So kind of in closing here, and I don't know if I have really that big of a point, but the instability we have is just one that's really generational in nature. Everyone knows that progressives cannot be the ruling class. Everyone knows that America cannot break apart. I mean, I guess all of these things could happen, but they'd be catastrophes, right? If America broke apart, you'd spend the rest of your life wishing it was back together again, because your entire family would be in constant danger and your standard of living would be in the gutter. So America can't fall apart, but at the same time, progressives can't rule. But at the same time, conservatives aren't ready to rule because they haven't been educated to rule. And that's why I and when you think about it that way, you just go back to the first part and think about the tragic loss of Charlie Kirk. I mean, I thought he was going back and watching my video of him. Oh, he's so fake. Yeah. But wasn't Charlie Kirk just the kind of person to be that bridge in the ruling class? I mean, he was a little bit rough around the edges. I'm not going to lie. I thought the college debates were kind of, I mean, they made a good point. And what better place to have debates than at college, right? And colleges should be ashamed for not taking those debates more seriously and putting professors up as opposed to their students. But that being said, this is they looked a little low class, and he probably could have been someone of his intelligence. Could have been doing something higher, and probably would have. And that's the great tragedy, right? He would have been the first of a new generation of young men who could be ready to move into that position of leadership, to woo Blue America off. That sounded weird. To woo Blue America and bring it back from the brink. I have this ongoing problem with conservatives or people from a more Republican background. Like, they point out the manifest insanity and evil of the left, and they're like, oh, well, we have to do something. And I agree, we have to do something. We have to try to gain power. I agree, we have to gain power. And because of that, we have to put emphasis on our allies. And I 100% agree with that as well. But here's the thing. Blue America is dying. 20th century leftism is dying. There will be another version of leftism sometime in the future, maybe even in our lifetime. But this iteration is going to zero in the next 20 years, 10 to 20 years. White leftism is dying. I can't seem to get this through to a lot of people in the more red American camp, even on the distant right. But Yarvin has said this too. You gotta woo the left. Their thought leaders are complete ghouls. They're totally insane. I don't have anything to say to them anymore. Do you have to have anything to say to them anymore? But you need to have some way to get them on side. There has to be some scenario they're presented with such that they can join a new power structure and save face. Otherwise, the alternative is they're going to fight to the death, like the boomers are right now. The boomers who are funneling money to these insane wokies, they're essentially fighting to the death. They're like, I don't care. I just want to have a legacy where I'm remembered as somebody good. So you take this money and keep on fighting the good fight, even though none of my ideas make sense, and they've made a dog's breakfast out of everyone's lives who's tried to implement them sexually and relationally, even though they've turned our cities into war zones, even though they've destabilized the entire world. I don't care. I just want progressives to be on the winning side so that my personal crusade can feel righteous and I can go to my death knowing that. That's the cause of our problems. And and maybe some of those people are too far gone. They're too far gone. They're too old to learn anything, right? But there are people waiting behind them in their 60s, in their 50s, in their 40s, who are thinking the exact same thing. This is their religion. They have to have some face-saving way to do this, to be the good guys in this whole interaction. And we have to give them some story like that. Like, we have to woo them into believing that there's a place for them in a new America. And it's not because they deserve it. It's not because they deserve it. It's because if we wait for every progressive that's competent to die, for enough of every competent progressive to die so that we just naturally inherit America, we will be waiting for 20, 30 years. And by that time, our country is going to be a ruin. We have to start presenting some kind of new approach to politics. And I have no idea what that is. I might know what, if I were to speak to a 20-year-old, I know what I'd tell them. I know what I would tell a 20-year-old. I know what I would tell a 20-year-old leftist. I certainly know what I'd tell a 20-year-old right-winger or moderate because I talk to them all the time. Or maybe 25 would be more accurate. I don't know what I tell to a 45-year-old progressive who feels that progressivism is their life's work. I don't know what to say to them anymore. I literally been blocking half of them all day. All day has been blocking them because I can't stomach it anymore. I can't stomach what the lies they're telling, and it's absolutely disgusting. And I'm not like blocking all of them. I'm blocking their thought leaders. But those thought leaders have people of the same cohort who read them and look to them to moral guidance. And if we wait for those people to die and age out of the institutions, oh man, we're not going to have a country anymore at the end of it. We're going to be completely inundated. And the quest of our politics after this event is going to be to come up with some kind of language that can do that, to come up with some kind of aesthetics that can make people believe. There is a hope. There's a hope. I'll say this. I don't want to end on a downer. Right? Someone needs to talk to the leftists, and I can't do it anymore. Or I don't even know the words to do it anymore. I don't want to humiliate myself talking to giant corn cobs. I don't want to sit there and watch someone lie to me or defend lying for 2 hours on end and then like have them lie more on Twitter. I want an actual conversation, and I just can't have that anymore. I don't see any opportunity for that. I want to end on a down note. But I will say this, right? There's an advantage here. And that is like the left is fundamentally a feminine object at this stage. It hasn't always been this way. You could say that, like, Jordan Peterson, the left wing is chaotic entropy. And as such, there is always kind of like a feminine nature to chaos and a feminizing nature to chaos. It's weird because there's also a feminine quality to order, but it seems weirdly inverted, right? Such that, especially with leftism, as it deteriorates, what's left over is almost entirely feminine in its nature. It's bitter, it's recriminating, it's malicious, it's sniping, it's bitchy, but it's still a human object, and it's still an object that is amenable to certain kinds of seduction. Now, one missed opportunity for seduction that I don't want to blame the people putting on that celebration of life for Charlie Kirk, because like I said, if Blue America had to plan a funeral like that, or sorry, a celebration of life like that, it would have taken them a month to put that together. So kudos to them, right? But, you know, for events like this, you got to start throwing your Gondor parties and maybe not televise your Hobbit parties. That's sort of the carrot of seduction. Look like people who have power. Act like people who have power. Do not act like people who are in a mode of weakness, which is unfortunately how a lot of Republicans have trained themselves to behave. And then there's also the possibility, and this is where cancel culture might actually be a force of good. Once political questions no longer have a right side to them, once you can be canceled both for being too far right and for being too far left, then all of a sudden the feminine political calculus immediately changes. I don't want to put down women, but effeminate men and most females look at politics in a certain way. And that way is a way that encourages social harmony and in a way that fosters relationships and in a way that does not damage the egos of the various parties involved. There's that famous meme when people like that enter into a conversation, they don't ask what's true, they ask, what would people want me to believe? What is the right thing to be seen believing in this context? And for the last 40 years, for all of the millennials' life, for all of the Gen Xers' life, the right thing to be seen believing has always been progressive. If that changes, if maybe sometimes you can be leftist and still believe in the bad thing, such that there are consequences, then it goes from being a fun game for women to play to being an unfun game for women to play. A lot of my female relatives are super into politics, actually, most of them, super into progressive politics. And I comment on this all the time. I kind of look at their lives and I like to say, what would you be like if you were born in 1923 and not 1983, or 1931 and not 1991, or 1947 and not 1987? Like, what would have changed? How would you be different? What if you were your grandmother? You can't go through one meal without talking about politics now. But your grandmother, who had probably statistically probably had a very similar disposition to you, hated politics and did everything to keep them out of the dinner table. You probably would have been apolitical 100 years ago. Almost certainly. So why is politics your favorite game right now? Well, politics is your favorite game because you always win the game. They're on the left, they bring up politics, they win, they get appreciated, they get accolades, they can play the martyr, they always win the political game. Politics has never been a game that they could even lose. If that changes, if people start getting canceled for having left-wing opinions, not being left and getting canceled, but being canceled because they were leftist activists, if there are consequences, moral consequences, then all of a sudden the game of politics becomes not fun to be played. And immediately, almost all of the energy will exit the left in very, very, very short order. And there will be a preference cascade like you cannot believe. That's one note of hope. But I think right now, unless something radically changes, I might be hanging up my discourse boots, because God help me, I can't see a future for it. But that being said, I think we'll go to the super chats now. It's not quite as hot as I thought. This room gets very, very hot. So if I did this right, by the way, this is a new format for the live stream. So I have a bigger picture. I think this camera isn't quite as good as I thought. Last time I thought it captured my face in like sharp definition, but I'm looking at it now and it looks like I'm kind of fuzzy. So maybe I'll have to get a new webcam. But, it is what it is, I suppose. All right. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, better make the PowerPoint go away. All right, guys. So the entropy chat is in the description if you want to send me a question during the question and answer period. And I imagine most of these questions will be on the same topic. I'm half tempted to turn on the fan. Maybe I'll do that very, very quickly. I don't know. I think it might actually interfere with it might be distracting. Anyway, so link for $49 USA. Well, thank you very much. That's very generous. Live-in girlfriend of 2 years, high income area, earns twice as much as me. Progressivist feminist who I've moderated on some issues, but not others. I've known her since first grade. She wants to marry. We're both Catholics, but she disagrees with the church teachings, re-feminism. She knows I'm right-wing, dismisses Charlie Kirk's death with live by the sword, by the sword. Get along decent otherwise. What to do? Oof. Oh, man. Oh, that's a tough situation. I mean, look, I would work on this a little bit here. Okay, look, I'll level with you here. Like, she's a feminist. She disagrees with you politically, and she earns more than you. These are kind of liabilities that you need to be aware of before proposing marriage. Obviously, it seems like a good relationship, so I'm not going to say you should walk away from it. But what I'm saying is, see what you can do to fix these problems. Try to become more aligned with the church's teachings on as much as possible. Try to recontextualize feminism. Try to get her to see how she follows you. I mean, she must be following you on something, right, Link? I mean, I imagine there's something that you're doing that's attracting her, right? So she must be following you in one regard or the other. So I would see if you can't lean into that and use that as a way to kind of mold her ideology a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't bring up this person, but I mean, one person who definitely did a very, very good job of covering the Charlie Kirk's death thing was Shoe Head. And maybe show her the Shoe Head video. But Shoe Head is a woman who is, she was always an anti-feminist a little bit, but she was very much, for the majority of her career, a woman of progressive persuasions. And then she married a very nice man who internet acquaintance. And guess what? She's moving towards the right. It's possible. You can do this. You can do this with enough confidence and with enough understanding of where you are. And as long as you're not simping to her, as long as you're a leader in the relationship, but try to use your leadership in the relationship to get her to see things from your point of view, to the point where she breaks with the progressive orthodoxy in one or two critical ways. My goal, if I were considering marriage to a feminist woman in your situation, would be get her to align with you on a few critical issues that are against the progressive orthodoxy, such that she gets an understanding of what it's like to be a heretic. So, for instance, in terms of transgender, in terms of Shoe Head, her big break with the left was a lot of their cruelty and identity politics, which she never was for. And a lot of the extreme anti-male stuff around feminism that broke Shoe Head away from the left in order to make her a good marriage prospect. And those are the kind of things that I would look for in your situation, Link. Make sure that she knows what. Another good one would be transgenderism. A lot of feminists have really soured on the transgenderism thing. If she knows what it's like to be on the outs from the main consensus of female opinion, and you're able to take her on that journey, then I think it might work out. But I mean, proceed with a lot of caution. because you've given me a lot of potential danger areas as far as female psychology is concerned. But that's the best advice I can give about how to make things better. Asteroidal Assassin for $2.99. He says, Relink, you just gotta bang her real hard and give her a little smack if she talks back. Well, that's the inside from the Mohammedan side of the world. Look, I mean, obviously, these are all just statistical relationships, and you should never destroy a relationship based on statistics. You know this woman better than I do based on a brief description. So, you have to be the judge of this. And, relationships are easy to destroy and very, very hard to build. So be careful before you exit a good thing. But, that being said, we have to keep our eyes out for potential danger areas in the future. Although I do not recommend Asteroidal Assassin's solution to this problem. But thank you for your suggestion nonetheless. Asteroidal Assassin, how do I convince this dude I know online not to transition? He mentioned having a girlfriend before. When I brought her up, it turns out his girlfriend was trans as well. Is there any convincing him? Well, the problem, it's like the same thing with the first caller. I mean, I need to know, to convince people, you need to know the person. I can't tell you how to convince somebody that I've never met. The way you convince people of things is you start with your common ground. That's why I said to link back there. I mean, don't start with all the things that are red flags. You're just telling me the things that are going to be things you have to overcome. You're not living in accordance to Catholic teachings. She makes more money than you, and she's a feminist. Those are, I wouldn't call them red flags. They are obstacles that you need to overcome. There are things that you need to convince her around in order for the relationship to start working really well, or perhaps working at all in the long term. And the same thing with your friend who's transitioning. Convincing comes from a private, heartfelt conversation in total honesty that focuses around questions that are asked in total sincerity. And then it begins with a point of common understanding and common morality. If you do not have the common point of morality, then there's no point in having the conversation. This is part of the reason why I'm struggling so much with having a conversation with the left. What is the common moral frame that I'm working with from the left? They don't value families in the way that I do. Every arrangement has equal moral value, including people who are single and married to themselves, as people who are actually in a family. That's a family too if you're married to yourself. They don't value the ordinary kind of liberal values anymore. Not that was pretty thin gruel to begin with. They don't value blood. They don't value God and faith. I can't use common religion as a starting point anymore. I can't even use truth as a common starting point anymore because they're lying so much, and they're maliciously lying too. That's what really got me. It's the malicious, character assassinating lies that I just can't get over that. So look, if you're going to convince this person not to transition, you have to find your common starting ground. Are you both Muslim? Do you both play the same board game? Are you both Blood Bowl players? Are you both Android Netrunner players? Do you both like Carcassonne? Do you both play Call of Duty? Whatever that commonality is, that's where you have to start. And without knowing that, I can't give you ways to convince this person, him or her or whatever, of anything. Our Dark Voyager for $5. Thank you, Dave. For try to start a more regular schedule for your streams. I like them can stay for the whole stream. I like them and can stay for the whole stream. I'll add that in there. Do something good with what little I can give. Oh, well, thank you very much. I will try to buy a new webcam. How about? That sounds like a good investment. I'm going to try to incorporate this thing so I can pay less taxes on the income I earn on this thing. That's an objective for this next year. Isaac Young, one of my favorite authors. I have not gotten a book yet because I have this pet peeve about buying fantasy novels that aren't complete. I'm scared from George R. R. Martin, but everyone, please check out the Domes of Cathedria and The Last Human from Isaac Young. Isaac Young for $5. I hate how often it feels that we're waiting for the next martyrdom, the next big tragedy. It used to be that saints changed the course of history. Now it feels that even a modern version of an unblemished sacrifice can't help the West. Well, I mean, I get what you're saying. It definitely feels in the 21st century they're just waiting for bad things to happen because people can't act together to make good things happen. But that being said, I spent most of the time talking down the Charlie Kirk death because it really kind of blackpilled me. But I mean, this death will have changed the world. There's no doubt about that. I mean, this is big. I've hardly been able to think about anything else over the course of the last 2 weeks since it happened. This is a very, very big happening, and I don't know. Look, I mean, unblemished sacrifice. I mean, I do think Charlie Kirk was a good man, perhaps even a great man, but I'm not so sure I'd compare him to Saint Sebastian or Saint Stephen or any of these martyrs who gave their life in defense of spreading the gospel in the early imperial period of Rome. But thank you for the donation. Generico for $15. Are we finally at the point where we realize that the left, not every left-wing person, but the left TM, is full of people who hate us, think we're evil because of our politics, want us dead, and think that it's funny? What common cause can be found with such an enemy? They simply must be opposed. Yeah, I think. I mean, they must be opposed, certainly. And canceling some bad actors at this stage, even though it's very, very much a low blow, ordinarily, it might be able to kind of shock the left into disintegrating in a lot of ways. It might actually implode the entire endeavor. But the best thing you can do to confront the left is to just focus on the good things. So I didn't get to this in the actual podcast, but the quote that's going around with Charlie Kirk right now is that phrase. I should have put this in the actual podcast. The phrase where he says something like, if you want to contribute to be a conservative, start a family, have a legacy, worship God, be faithful, build a community, make America great again. Something like that. I mean, that's what the left is really afraid of. A Charlie Kirk that's remembered for saying that is more of a threat to the left than a bunch of people screaming about why we should cancel this person or that. And I agree. Look, in this particular moment, that dirty work is necessary. But in the long term, it's going to be the inspiring message that destroys the left. And more importantly, the inspiring message that allows for some amount of organization that is not the left. So thank you very much. Isaac Young for $5. I don't know what to make of this, but it struck me that nearly everyone on the right who disliked Charlie Kirk still grieved. I was in class and I felt like I got punched in the gut. I hadn't spared a second thought to Kirk before then. Yeah, like I said, I'm on video insulting Charlie Kirk, and I guess I'll keep it up just because I think it's low class to take down a video that you're not proud of. But I still agree. I mean, it wasn't until he died that I realized how great he was. Isaac Young again for $5 says, have to leave for work, but my final thought is I don't think discourse as interpolitical communication is dead. I think it's fundamentally changed to the left, right, flinging dead bodies over the castle walls, literally or proverbially. Yeah, I mean, is that discourse in the way that any of us mean it? I mean, yeah. Let me hurl some dead bodies at my adversaries. It's not really my thing. uh like it's just ugly, I just don't want to do. It's necessary. We're trapped in this situation. Cancel culture is the only option we have left to us. And if we don't, then the only alternative is going to be a new round of assassins targeted at people like me, possibly targeted at people like you. We have to draw a line in the sand around excusing, minimizing, or lying about an assassination to excuse or minimize it, which is what Jimmy Kimmel did. If we can't draw a line here and enforce some kind of moral hazard on this, we are making the world dangerous for our children in a very real way. I don't know any way around it. Aaron is 100% right about that. But thank you, Isaac Young. Generico, we exist in the prisoner's dilemma experiment where the right constantly betrayed the right and the right tried to play nice. Or the left constantly betrayed the right and the right tried to play nice. The only way to get to play nice is if the right is in charge. That is apparent. Only with power can you exercise virtue and enforce standards. We cannot rely on the enemy to simply be nice. Well, you're half right about that, Generico. Only with power can you enforce standards. That is true. But you can absolutely exercise virtue outside of power. The Christians have exercised virtue outside of power for the majority of Christian history. So that is a very deceptive statement, because enforcing standards and exercising virtue are two very, very different things. In fact, like I just said, one of the best things you can do in this moment is to embody Charlie Kirk's aspirational mission. That is a much, much, much more powerful move in the long term than the cancellation campaigns, which, while necessary, are still kind of dirty, in my opinion. Generico for $5 USA. The Western view of the world is logos. The leftist view of the world is anti-logos. I like to say pronomian and antinomian, but whatever. To us, it is a tool to pursue truth. To them, words are a tool for the obfuscation of truth. Yes, at this stage of, leftism wasn't always like this. At this stage in its corruptive, degenerative process, language is just things that leftists say to get what they want. It's kind of like a kid with a candy machine. You put the phrase in and you hit it enough and hope that it delivers candy to you. If we can have heart-to-heart conversations with leftists, then I absolutely would. But I don't know. Can those occur in public anymore? I would love to have a heart-to-heart conversation with a leftist in public. But I don't think the leftist would. I think it would be very, very dangerous for them socially. And I think those conversations are only going to be occurring in private. Maybe I'm open to discourse if it can be managed. I just can't do this whole lying thing anymore. It does not work psychologically, spiritually, or politically. The shadow ban for $15. Thanks for the stream. This is going to be a rough couple of years, but the only way out is through. Indeed. And I guess through means canceling people who are excusing, minimizing, and lying about murder, which, just a safety precaution. The shadow ban for $3. If you're still looking for a chill fantasy series, check out Death's Gate, the Death Gate Cycle. It's by the people who wrote Dragonlance. But less D&D. Yeah, I remember reading the Dragonlance books in high school. I was never a fan. I had a friend who was super into those books, and I wasn't into Anne McCaffrey either. I really didn't like Anne McCaffrey or Dragonlance. I know, like, Dragons of the Autumn, Twilight, the Winter, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. I'll check out the Death's Gate Cycle. Right now I'm rereading Howl's Moving Castle and really enjoying it. It's thoroughly young adult fiction, but it's still very delightful. And it was the inspiration, very loosely, for one of my favorite Miyazaki movies, The the much underrated Howl's Moving Castle. Link for $3 says, also recently I finished Camp of the Saints. Have you read it? And if so, what do you think of it? I've only read excerpts because I could never get my hand on a copy, but it's back in print again, so I might order one. The thing is, I feel like I've already read the best parts. You ever have that feeling like, now I have to read the book? And I already know, everyone has already photographed all the pages with the most juicy, delicious parts. And I already know what happens plot-wise because I read it off Wikipedia. And now I have to read this book and it's already spoiled. But no, I have not read Camp of the Saints. But thank you. I mean, everyone's talking about it these days. Sam153 for $25 USD. But where was Gondor when the Westfold fell? Mr. Kirk's death felt like the brutalizing a faithful retriever by demonic junkies. Something all good men find revolting to the core. Somber analysis as always. I mean, yeah, it's been brutal. I don't know, man. It's just so weird. I never would have liked Charlie Kirk, and now I feel like I'd follow him to the gates of hell now, almost. It's weird. Man, if somebody could take that mantle and, I don't know, maybe not do the college debate circuit. I really think that I do realize that college is something that you have to go through to get a job, and the progressives are sitting at that spigot and cutting it off and trolling it. And so in some sense, rallies at college always have to be a thing, and debates are for college. That is what college is for. And so debate, and the left is like, oh, how could you possibly debate college students? They're just kids, man. They're just kids. Innocent kids can't be expected to debate politics. And meanwhile, in the mandatory diversity seminars, they hold these kind of debates all the time where they have these professors go up against 17-year-olds in a mandatory setting. Anyway, Ben White for $5. Well, sorry, I should complete that thought there, though. I really am looking for somebody to take up the reins of Charlie Kirk and to be a similar figure. Matt Walsh is a little too grumpy and a little too old. It needs to be somebody who's... Matt Walsh is my age, and we need someone that's more Charlie Kirk's age. And but somebody who maybe has the same politics as Matt Walsh. That might be the right way to do it. And if they sort of take up the banner of Turning Points USA, I really don't think... Erica Kirk looks like a phenomenal woman, a very spiritual woman. I want to read her books, maybe. Or maybe get my wife her book. I don't think that she's the right person to lead a youth movement of conservative men in this particular historical moment. That says nothing about her character, just about the person she is. We are, if not going to war, going right up to the edge of that. And unfortunately, this is one of the things that the male genius is really best suited for. Giant games of chicken when war are the stakes is not exactly the fair sex's strong suit, which is what Turning Point is going to be involved in for the foreseeable future. Ben White for $5 USA. When Dave said, I can't do it anymore regarding talking with leftists, I really felt that. I know most of the audience had been saying it for a while, but recent events have made me feel like it's near impossible to share a country with leftists. Well, unfortunately, Ben White, we do share a country with leftists, and that's a boomer talking point, like, you can't share a country with leftists. Well, guess what? You do. Okay, great, man. But what we're saying is that we can't have civic life with those people. So if you want to have a country with civic life, then they don't complain that civic life doesn't exist when you tell us that we have to live with people who think that we should be murdered for our political opinions, or who think an appropriate response to a politically motivated murder is a politically motivated hit piece. This is not a rational way to run a public square. The ball is really in the leftist court at this stage. I want to do reconciliation. I want an olive branch, but they really have to throw me a bone on this one. I can't go in on the like maybe it's okay to shoot people sometime, or an appropriate response to a assassination is whitewashing the assassination. That's the only reason why these Charlie Kirk hit pieces could be coming out this week. Thank you very much, Ben White. Charles Mackey for $25 says, "Good evening. I hope you and yours are well. Your point on wooing over the other part, or at least some of its leaders, is correct. But there still is part of me that yearns for some hour of bloody accounting. It's not good, and it's probably just my youth and lack of experience, but I can't see any other conclusion. I hope I'm wrong." Um, yeah, I know what you mean. I feel like I want that too, a lot of times. It is misguided. It is misguided. We win, but I mean, maybe something will have, like, force is needed. We need force to crack down on Antifa. We need force to unearth these potential terror cells that are organizing potential hits on conservatives. We need to have force when it comes to that, and we need to do this mercilessly. But this needs to be done through proper authorities. And as advocates of the truth, we need to have the courage of our convictions. Two of my favorite villains of all time. One of them is Gul Dukat, the Star Trek Cardassian villain. I put this in my last essay. True victory comes from showing your enemies they were wrong to oppose you to begin with, to force them to acknowledge the greatness of your ideas. This is a classic Star Trek villain, and I always remember everyone who's played Dawn of War, and there was a new version of that game that came out recently, a remastered version. Who's the villain everyone remembers in Dawn of War? Well, it's Eliphas the Inheritor, like the word bearer, Dark Apostle from Dark Crusade. He has the best lines in that entire series. And the reason why is he is an absolute insane, like murderous psychopath from hell that has literally draped in human skin, 10,000 years old, absolutely crazy, wants to bring hell to earth. And while he's conquering this planet on the Dark Crusade, he's constantly like, do you want to convert to the truth? Are you ready to receive the truth? You can be forgiven. Just join us, join the truth. You can't stop the truth from being here. And it's so absolutely insane. This guy is absolutely the worst villain imaginable, and he still is trying. He still has the courage of his convictions. The point at which you resort to unnecessary violence is it's a confession of a lack of faith in your own ideas. Now, I'm not talking about legitimate state violence where we have to kill this person. We essentially have to go for the death penalty for Charlie Kirk's assassin, because any failure to do that will result in copycats. I am convinced. This is just about our safety. But any attempt to exert revenge for wrong ideas when you could be trying to convince people, even to the point where you're waging war against them, like Eliphas the Inheritor, it's a confession of a lack of faith. And this is a war of belief. We at all times have to be looking for the conversion of our opponents, to the point where we're trying to convert them when we're in the middle of a battle with them, to the point where we're trying to convert them while they're climbing the scaffoldings. You never, ever, ever, ever let go the desire to convert your opponents to the truth. That is how you wage war, and that's a fundamental belief of mine. Ben White for $5 USA. I went on social media, and so many people I went to high school or college with, or in marching band with, are posting some of the most terrible things about Charlie Kirk after his death that I've ever seen. It really was a black-pilling moment, indeed. I mean, there are debunking articles, and sometimes that can sober people up a little bit if you reply back with these quotes are out of context. Try to reframe this as, okay, you don't have to agree with Charlie Kirk, But this is the month where we buried Charlie Kirk. Like, this is the week of his burial. And you, this is, you know, you're spreading lies about him. I think you might want to take down this article. And maybe you can express your disagreement with your ideas a different week than the week we're burying him, because otherwise it looks like you're just trying to besmirch a person's life at the moment when we usually pay our respect to the dead. And it's a really disgusting thing to do that, especially if you're lying about a person. Bright Dawn for $10 USA. So to get back the feminist question I asked a while back, you came to the conclusion that we need a feminism without man-hating. Well, I mean, like, we need something that's called feminism, but it won't really be feminism. I think it might go deeper. What is the psychological need feminism fills? What is the type of women that become feminists missing in their lives? Okay, I mean, so women need ways to narratively make sense about their lives, and they need that. Women need religion more than men do. This is Men can exist inside a nihilistic space, or if I mean, look, both sexes need. It's like air, right? You know, all mammals need air, but dolphins and whales can hold their breath for a really, really long time, and humans cannot. And the same thing is true for men and women. Women need religion like humans need air constantly. And so what happened is, like, feminism fills the religious niche for women. And it also gives them a way to be heroic outside of marriage, which, considering an increasing number of women aren't getting married and have an enormous amount of free time, it fills that mission in their own soul. And because of that, it's just an irreplaceable aspect of that. Now, you can say, like, okay, well, we'll take Christianity and put it in that slot. The problem is that Christianity has not modernized. I mean, it's modernized in the way that it's weakened its orthodoxy. When progressives say they want to modernize Christianity, they mean they want to turn it into a heresy. They want to introduce heresies into it. They want to mold it to their political cult, which is just absolutely vile. And it's something that is, like, people are right to be repulsed by progressive versions of the religion. But there's another way that Christianity hasn't modernized, and that is, like, this is actually applies to men more than it does to women. Christianity has not taken into account that marriage is very uncommon in the modern world. And it's just like, well, if we meme marriage hard enough, then magically men will get married at the age of 25. Like, and even conservative religious people, they don't understand that, like, okay, so you meme it really hard at the men ask the women out, and then the women all reject them because the women are working off of a model of relationships that they've been supplied by the upper class. And they want men with a certain amount of strength and earning potential, which the modern economy doesn't give young men at the age of 25. And it's increasingly not giving men at any time in their lives. Christianity, like, modern preachers think that the way of dealing with this problem is denying it. Sure, it's not ideal. I'd like to live in a world where everyone either gets married or lives a life as a clergy member or as a religious mendicant or a religious monastic. That would be ideal, but that's not the world we live in. And Christian pastors and Catholic priests have really done nothing to address, like, the 45-year-old woman who's really not going to get married, or the many, many 33-year-old men who haven't been married yet, who might have a very late marriage, but at the same time, you know, might not be the best prospects and might actually be single for the rest of their lives. And they need some way of making their lives have meaning that does not rely on this 1950s model of marriage just being something that everyone does. It just, you know, this just needs to be done. And once we do that, there will be solutions to feminism that will become apparent from the circumstances. Like, good religious ideas, like good music, doesn't come from a formula. Good music comes from the moment. It comes from an emotion. It comes from an experience. This is, it's like poetry. It's a very human and interpersonal thing. And even if you can mimic it with LLMs, it fundamentally what it is comes from the moment. And the same thing as new religious modes. The new vision that will replace feminism for women in their lives, it will be probably some form of Christianity or a monotheistic religion, but we can't map it out in theory. We have to kind of see what it's like when we take these issues of high modernity seriously and sees what falls out of it, right? And that's what I would that's that's what has to happen. I can't plan it out. I read ahead in the super chats and accidentally laughed. Why is this not loading? That's interesting. Oh, okay. Okay, here we go. Absolute Defender for $3 USA. Please keep debating lefties. I feel less animosity for them than Joel Berry types. Well, it depends. I see, the thing is, I feel absolutely no animosity towards Joel Berry. I feel absolutely no animosity towards Antifa goons. I feel no animosity. I feel a little bit of disgust towards effeminate men, but other sexual deviants, not so much. I actually really like hanging out with lesbians. It's weird. Like religious disagreements aside, I've always really enjoyed that demo in college. They're just always the greatest people. Or a lot of fun, right? Maybe it's just like my thing, like I shouldn't say I like tomboy, but look, the person I married, right? Women like that. It's whatever. But I cannot stand academics. I can't stand the Nathan Kaufnesses. I can't stand the Steven Pinkers. I can't stand the Ben Burgesses, the people that put doctor or professor in their bio and then just scoff at people like they've done something amazing. I go into an apoplectic rage when I see those people. And that's what brings out the animosity in me. For some reason, my audience really doesn't like Joel Berry, and people like Joel Berry just aren't part of my life. I'm sure like the reason why I hate academics is academics are part of my life. I never knew anyone like Joel Berry. Like he seemed kind of like backwards to me, but then like a lot of people are kind of have backwards cultural norms and are kind of behind the times and aren't noticing things as fast as they should have. And I can't really hold that against him, but people have history. I'm sure that I was way harder on Nathan Kaufnes than I should have been. I definitely was, but I'm enraged when I feel an academic is lying to me. I'm just enraged by that. I can't stand it. It's like that line from Clue. Like, we've seen that movie Clue, Mrs. White. It was like flames behind my eyes. Ben White for $10 USA. Most of these people grew up in affluent white communities, and many were friendly with me back then. These are the people who are excusing Charlie Kirk's death. It wasn't easy coming to grips with the facts that so many people I was friends with are insane. The only moderate liberal married girl who expressed sympathy for Charlie got dogpiled by the others. But I mean, they're not insane. They're group thinking. You got your answer right there, right? The moderate liberal married girl, like you imagine shoe on head, right? She speaks out in her Facebook group and she gets dogpiled, which is why everyone are saying these insane things. That's your answer. They're not insane. They're just acting like sheep people. They would never do this to a person. They like imagine like if a Muslim died, like they have a friend from Iran who comes over who supports the Ayatollah and then dies. They would never be like that fucker supported the Ayatollah Khomeini. And now I'm going to take every bad thing he ever said, put it in an article and just go around town spreading all of these lies about him, taking quotes out of context to make people think the worst of him when his body isn't cold yet. They would never do that for any other person. They would never do that from any person from any other culture. The only reason why they do this is their group has given them permission to be in this moment a complete sadist. It's this normie sadism. Bright Dawn for $10 USA. About the democracy thing. I have a feeling last stream you simply felt grief about the idea that the people will need to be tricked, but didn't have a case for why they'd accept naked Caesarism instead of an Octavian Principate type system. The very namesake of the Caesarian government got stabbed to death. Well, I mean, is an Octavian triumvirate that different from Caesarism? I think, isn't that just that is Caesarism, right? That's just Caesarism with more steps involved. I don't understand. When I say Caesarism, I thought we were talking about the entire false cult of the emperor that emerged after the fall of the Republic. I thought that's what we were talking about. Maybe I'm not following you, Bright Dawn, but that's what I thought we were talking about. Darth Kilhoun for $3 says, "Hey Dave, perfect timing. I needed someone intelligent to listen to while I worked on my online college discussion post. It is far more stimulating than my last class in this substandard university. Well, glad to provide the entertainment, Darth Kilhoun. More power to you." Ben White for $3 USA. Where else besides church can men even meet young women who aren't leftists now? I don't even want to be associated with leftist women anymore. Too many of them, even in the church, unfortunately. Well, I mean, there are leftists, right? There are leftists like Rebecca Watson, who's just like a complete hag at the stage. Complete. She even looks like a ghoul, Rebecca Watson. Remember when she was moderately, like she looked like a person? She looks like a ghoul now. She looks like a literal ghoul. There are leftist women like Rebecca Watson, but then there are leftist women like Shoe on Head. Would anyone here be unhappy to marry a Shoe on Head? Probably not. That would be a pretty good catch. I mean, other elements of the history notwithstanding, but this is like, you have to give women the right to be leftists in their early life. But you have to discern is this woman ready to accept moral direction from you and just has some opinions about how everyone needs to get along on the side? Or is this woman like an actual bitter person who's indulging in this normie sadism type thing? There is a big difference between those. All women will adopt leftism because it is the default beliefs of most female friend groups. And if the hand-holding group is left-wing, then all women, regardless of their psychological profiles, will be left-wing. But you can see, like, what does that mean? Does that mean I want everyone to get taken care of, but I'm otherwise willing to accept morality and male direction in some things? In that case, I think, that's a very workable marriage prospect then. Cam, $3 USA says, how effective will Trump be in rolling up the left-wing NGO network with the Charlie Kirk carte blanche? Well, I don't know. With Trump, it's always a mixed bag. You're asking me for a prediction about the future in operations that are by their very nature clandestine. I will say that you will have some minor victories. The question really is just how robust this network is. Trump is going to take a chunk out of them. It probably won't be a very big chunk. But the question is not whether he's going to go after them like J. Edgar Hoover went after the mob, like root and branch. He's not going to J. Edgar Hoover the NGOs. The question is rather whether these NGOs are so fragile and so brittle that even if they get a chunk taken out of them, they'll just start collapsing on their own because it will cause a cascading set of failures. It will trigger. I think that's the more promising outcome. So unfortunately, that being kind of a nonlinear reaction, it's very hard for me to predict. Trump will be minorly successful, as he has been with most of the things. But the real question is how fragile these organizations are. And they're filled with so much deadwood that you might toss a match in and it all could go up in flames. Who knows, right? Dreadnought for $5 USA. I get everything about the boomers, but I gotta admit that a based boomer is a treasure. My dad has been working all his life, and he often comes out with nuclear takes that make me look soft. Anyway, I hope that you and the wife are doing well. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, the base boomers out there, they need more love. Thank you. A Shriddle Assassin for $3 USA. The damnedest thing is none of the left gives any recognition to Tyler Robinson. Maybe it's because there's no excuse for him, but Thomas Crooks had the excuse of Trump being a president. I mean, Thomas Crooks, the word on the street is that Thomas Crooks was just a crazy person that would have assassinated Biden too, and he was just looking for notoriety, I guess. I mean, that's not very convincing to me, but somehow I get the sense that had this been as political as Tyler Robinson, then we would have heard about it from our guys. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, look, the left is going to do everything in its power to memory hole Tyler Robinson. And it, denigrating Charlie Kirk is just part of that. So, it is what it is. Thank you, though. Bright Dawn for $10 USA. Ben White asked how to find a non-left-wing woman. I myself had made my peace having to deal with that. There's simply a type of person high in openness and agreeableness that is almost guaranteed to be left-wing. That is my type. Certain personality types simply seem destined to become left-wing. Yeah, but as a guy, you want the agreeableness without all of the openness. That's like the golden spot. I mean, you don't want a woman who's too open. That sounded wrong. But, the agreeableness is very, very good. But look, all agreeable women will be left-wing. Left-wing is the ideology of most young women. So if they're highly agreeable and they use the internet, they will become left-wing. But, hopefully biology eventually dissuades them from this. But it's going to be one hell of a bottleneck. And look, leftism is not the end of the world for women, guys. You can work with it. Society Man for $10 USA. For all the truth there is in the death of discourse and all the unity at that moment demands, I can't help but worry about Trump and the GOP's extremely sloppy response to the Epstein stuff. I would be much happier with leadership. I was certain was not compromised in that way. Yeah, I don't know what to say, man. You're not going to discover that. Society Man, good to hear from you again, by the way. A real old head from back in the day, pre-COVID. But look, the thing is, my guess, and I don't know anything about the Epstein thing, my guess is that the Epstein files has to do with our intelligence services in one way, shape, or form. And the intelligence services are telling the administrations that if they're released, it will compromise the effectiveness of the military to do its job. And because of that, all governments, until the last person on that list dies, are going to be put between a rock and the hard place where they have to decide between the effectiveness of the military and being truthful. And that does not necessarily mean that Trump is compromised. What that means is that we have a deep state, and the deep state is going to do everything in its power to cover this up. And I don't know, is it the most effective thing we should? I mean, I understand cathartically that what you're saying is correct, but are we being sidetracked? I mean, the real thing is, I think that we need to make sure that nothing like this is going on right now actively, where they're compromising politicians. But we have to spend so much energy to get this exposed. I think that the better thing is to chase the money. Just go after the money. That's my thing. If I don't, people, I'll put it this way. Powerful people do nefarious things with money. We don't want them to do nefarious things. Now, powerful people will fight to the death not to be exposed or to go to jail. And you will spend a damn long time taking them down on the righteous crusade. But they won't fight so hard if you just take away their money, because they'll just cut their losses and do something else. Hopefully not as nefarious. And so if you just take their money, you can stop the behavior for a fraction of the cost. So it's just a better bang on the buck. Anyway, thank you, Society Man. Dreadnought for $5 USA. I'm not sure the discourse is possible. I don't really like anime, and I know I don't really like anime, and I know you don't, but one of the best shows I've ever watched is Frien. The phrase, "for them words are just a means to deceive humans," is powerfully prophetic. Yeah, I've heard really good things about Frieren, the elf anime. I should look into it. I've seen great animes. I love Cowboy Bebop. I love Vampire Hunter. I talk about them all the time. I just don't like anime culture. I really don't like anime waifu culture, that sort of stuff. Bright Dawn, $3 USA. What are the odds Charlie Kirk's death was a red flag to distract from Trump's Epstein problem? Okay. Oh, what are the odds? I don't know. I mean, I really don't think so. I think that I kind of had a brain fart there. Pardon me. Didn't mean to trail off. I think that the you could never engineer this. We're getting into kind of like the whole Israel killed Charlie Kirk thing. It doesn't make sense. How you'd have to have perfect engineering and perfect timing. And at this point, like you could just fake everything in the news. If you had that much power, then everything in the news could be fake, and the entire government could be ruled by somebody from Russia. All the news could be faked. The internet could be faked. Who knows, right? I just think that we're really barking up the wrong tree. We really need to keep and furthermore, like bringing up this, like, look, the truth will out. If you think there's a conspiracy, like, time is on your side. Bring this up later. But right now, we have the chance to go after potentially Soros money and shut down some of these networks that our enemies are using against us. We have to take this opportunity now. And if we start doing this whole conspiracy thing about, cabals, assassinating Charlie Kirk, we're going to miss this opportunity to do good in the world and to actually give Charlie's life a legacy. And we're not going to ever discover this super secret network because they have so much power that they can do physically impossible things. Chai Squared for $25. Hi, Dave. Thanks for the stream. If I ever get a chance, I'd love to run a GURPS game for you. Isaac's young setting for The Last Human would run like a dream. Too bad I don't think either of us will ever have the time for something like that. Oh, well. Oh, yeah, that'd be actually a really good idea. One thing people should do, with Isaac Young's universe is just like take that universe and start making like tabletop games. Like, you ever think about that? Like, take Isaac Young's universe, a friend of the channel, or if you prefer some other author of that, but just take that and make like a skirmish game, just like a tabletop skirmish game, like Kill Team or one-page rules. And then just like have STLs for that, or have suggested proxies that you can buy from the Games Workshop range. I know a number of guys who would love to play in a grimdark universe that is not owned by some kind of progressive company. That would be a lot of fun, and it would support our guys. And furthermore, it would create kind of like an ecosystem for developing more entertainment in that sphere. When you can build on people who share your ideology, like, doors start opening up. Bernard Knowles for $5 says, after Charlie's murder, both my parents and my brother went to church for the first time in decades. While there, they met people who had returned after a long absence. Where do you think this goes? Will it last? Um, yes and no. Most of these popular surges, like there is a church attendance surge after 9/11 too, and it happened just before the largest like atheist explosion in anyone's lifetime. So you have to be careful about these sudden popular surges because popular energy is super strong when it happens and then it fades away instantly. That's how popular force works. But from this surge, you were going to get you were going to have diamonds in the rough. You're going to have people who stick with it. And that's what you really need to be looking out for. Look for the people who are going to be coming to church continuously and who aren't just there because the TV made them feel something this week. That's really what you need to be looking for and building, because that core coterie of people is going to be your consistent churchgoers from there on, and it will be and also having like that coterie in place will cause the wishy-washy people to stick and stick for longer, potentially even permanently. So just try to develop the core elite group, and people who are committed and want to be churchgoers long term, they'll be brought in by these momentary lapses, these momentary surges in conscience that come from these assassinations and these catastrophes. So it's not fake, but just don't manage your expectations is what I would say. You know, everyone texts me when I'm on these things. No Lee for $3. What about Stefan Erickson? Great fantasy author, good way to escape politics. Have I ever heard of Stefan Erickson? I don't know if I have. I guess I'll check him out, but it might be a good thing to look into. What if I don't know, Stefan Erickson. I don't. Does it ring a bell? But my voice is running out, so I'm going to have to hurry here. Asteroidal Assassin for $3 USA. How do you get into Warhammer lore? I started listening to the Horus Heresy. That's my. I mean, I got in via Dawn of War video games, way back in 2006, and back then it was a much more niche hobby, and there was a lot less crap in it. But as far as like fiction goes, there's the Eisenhorn series, and there's the Horus Heresy, and the Horus Heresy is my go-to. I haven't read all of it. I don't know if anyone has. I've read the first 4 books, and they were awesome. Bright Dawn for $3 USA. I hope my last message wasn't too offensive. I can certainly see myself getting smacked for saying that right now, but the question keeps gnawing at me. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, look, ask the question. It's just, I don't know if I can give you the answer you want. So, it's neither here nor there. Thank you though. Sex Freakman for $10 USA. I predict the center right will try to fight us over the legacy of Charlie too, and it feels cynical to even talk about this. But we shouldn't let them. I don't know how that looks, but it'll probably involve right-wing cancel culture. And we should take their lunch on that matter too. Appreciate your work. Okay, this is where I will draw the line. Do not execute cancel culture against moderate right-wingers. Do not do this. Absolutely not. Never cancel a party that you're in active dialogue with and which you're winning the dialogue. We are winning the dialogue with, first of all, I don't, except in extreme circumstances where people are literally making assassinations against people like me more likely, I think cancel culture is kind of an inappropriate tool. But certainly, when it comes to people who you are in a dialogue with, and certainly, when you're winning that dialogue, don't use cancel culture. Just win the dialogue and take the money. You're winning the game. We are winning the war against James Lindsay. I don't need to cancel James Lindsay. He makes a fool out of himself every time he opens his mouth. I don't need to cancel Joel Berry. I win every single engagement I have with him online. If anything, their presence helps us because it lets us get into this conversation that we automatically rhetorically win. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, don't cancel people who are in your coalition. Certainly don't cancel people who you're in dialogue with, and certainly don't cancel people who you're in a winning dialogue with. So anyway, but yeah, I get your point. We will have a conflict with them, but we're winning it anyway. There's no contest. Aloe vera for $25 USA. Have you ever read A River Runs Through It? I've seen the movie with Brad Pitt, a novel from the 70s that really captures the family relationships between men, brothers and their fathers. The story is told from the perspective of one of the brothers watching the other brother fall into alcoholism. Beautiful depiction of love of somebody who is struggling. Yeah, I'll read that. I remember there were like two Brad Pitt movies that were like Western romances that took place in Montana. And one of them was the more realistic, The River Runs Through It. And the other one was the more like hyper romantic and kind of silly and schmaltzy, but also epically more rememberable Legends of the Fall, which is just like this super schmaltzy early 20th century romance that is like it's kind of a cheesy movie, but it is also a lot more memorable. But I appreciate the realism. That might be a good book. It might be a good book to look into. I imagine the book is better than the movie. Anyway, Charles Mackey for $5. I think our difference in thought may be the difference between a chaos and Necron sympathizer. Necrons are the most fun in Dark Crusade. No, man, Charles Mackey, Dark Crusade, chaos is a better villain than Necrons. Necrons just represent death. Chaos represents damnation. Jesus said it. Don't fear the obliteration of body. Fear the obliteration of soul. That's obviously what's scarier. But anyway, nerd conflicts aside, I'll go on to Link for $5. Sorry for the repeat message, but I couldn't resist. The same girlfriend knows I read Camp of the Saints, knows kind of what it's about, and is cool with it. I suggested she read it, and she said maybe, lol. Am I spurging? Anyway, the book's good, more than its quotes, for sure. Well, maybe I'll read it. It's just like low priority in my mind at this stage. Oh, it's interesting. Based on the tilt of the camera, the pictures behind me look really crooked, even though they're leveled with the tool. I need to get a better background, man. Anyway, thank you very much, Link, for the super chat. Keep on working with that girlfriend. She seems like she might be secretly based, but then again, I don't know her, so I can't give you good relationship advice on super chats. I don't know what to tell you. Bright Dawn for $10 USA. Octavian pretended the Republic is still alive. When Emperor Decius' son died in 251, he said, "Let none grieve. The loss of a single soldier is not a big loss for the Republic." They still pretended they were a republic. The Republic officially ended with Diocletian, not Octavian. Yeah, bullshit. Yeah, okay, great. The Republic ended with Octavian. Yeah, and the Roman Empire didn't end until 1919 with the end of the Habsburgs. Are you happy now? The Roman Empire ended in 1919 at the end of World War I. Congratulations, you did it. Yeah, okay, fine, fair enough, Bright Dawn. Asteroidal Assassin for $3. Question for Dave and the entire chat. In a woman, which would you prefer? High agreeability but left wing, or low agreeability and right wing? Well, I'd have to know more facts about her, but if she has high agreeability and she's married to you, she won't be left wing for very long. Whereas low agreeability and right wing, I guess you could swing it. Like, I always think like a good example of a low agreeability right wing woman that you would want to marry would be like Peachy Keenan, right? Like a blogger like that. I don't know, like any of your like based female people who are in the sphere sometimes who are also moms. But like a good example of like a low agreeable person that you probably wouldn't want to marry. I always think of someone like the Stranger People from the alt-right days, like, I don't know, Emily Eucas, where I'm just thinking like, I know you're based, but the man who marries you is going to have his hands full. And I would not, I don't know, I wouldn't want to recommend that. So, political alignment is not everything. People really mapped that a little bit too much, especially in the Zoomers. Anyway, Joy Empire for $25 USA. Do you believe that part of cultural revival and forming new art will have to involve ruralism or at least more experiences out there? As far as I can tell, 21st century city living is not particularly conducive for the sublime and mystical experiences one wants to depict in art and broader folk culture. Well, I mean, first of all, local or regionalism, of which I love, and that if you look at the pictures that play in the intro song, they're all regionalist art. Regionalism was not exclusively a ruralist phenomenon. As a matter of fact, I have a few pictures in that regionalist collection that are from urban areas. There's an urban expression of regionalism. Now, do modern urban areas have folk culture like the Harlem Renaissance did in Harlem? I don't think they really do. They're kind of like dying elite culture, and that's not really the fitting subject of art. It's kind of cold and uninspiring. But one thing that people like, well, maybe we're past this era, but there is a certain kind of magic of suburbs. Like I just moved to a suburb, and there's just like this quiet magic about it. The thing you see in like Steven Spielberg movies or Stranger Things, or that you hear about in alternative bands from the 80s or 90s. There's a spirit here. Now, unfortunately, it's the people who live here are all geriatric, but I still think there's something that could be done. The romanticism of being an urban or suburban homesteader is not something that's totally undiscoverable in our modern era. But anyway, I will keep on going through these super chats. It's a good idea though. Joy Empire. Looking into regionalism wouldn't be a bad idea. Peter C for $25 USA. I found a girlfriend who's completely red-pilled. A fan of Yuri Bezmenov. Told a big-nosed joke on the third date. Woof. A gem. Yet she still struggles with the problem of a typical modern woman. She still struggles with listlessness, irreligiosity, therapists who keep changing her meds, etc. Any advice on dating a female groyper? Well, first of all, get the meds constant. Don't really, really seriously, dude. Women's personality and who they're attracted to is highly dependent on meds. And this was one of the concerns I had when I was dating my own wife, is that she was on some medication. And I kind of was worried that she would stop being attracted to me when she got off of them. And so luckily there was a period while we were engaged, she did get off of them and she was still attracted to me. But like the med stuff, man, that is really dangerous. Like, if she's got a constant dose and she's on that for the rest of her life, guaranteed, then okay, fine, you can work with that. But you don't want her constantly changing her meds every month. That is a recipe for disaster. You've got to solidify that psychological thing down before you move forward. That's just my suggestion. You really need to have that squared away, especially with women. Blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. Look, if she's listless or has irreligiosity, like that's your job as a man. Just say like, I'm going to church. I want you to come with me. Like she'll do that for you. Like if a woman is not willing to go with you to church just to be with you, I don't know if she's a prospect. And when she's going to church, she'll probably kind of absorb it from the ether. I've seen a lot of women do that. So like that irreligiosity and listlessness are opportunities for your male leadership. The medication thing is outside of your control and is a big obstacle that you need to focus down on, because you cannot fight her hormones and they've got to be stable before you can, risk your entire life on marrying her. You've got to have her on a solid hormonal regimen that goes on for a little bit before it's mainly for her own attraction, because women are so hyper dependent on that. Bright Dawn for $3 USA. Openness being a negative thing in women is something I can't accept. I didn't expect any you saying. I can't stand women who are close-minded. Well, okay, I was kind of being facetious. I meant like, I have a friend and she's really open to new experiences. Like I was kind of using it as a suggestion for like sexual openness, which is a very big red flag, because women with like a huge number of the whole song and dance. There's certain. I mean, men are damaged by too much sexual experience as well. They're just not as damaged as women. Women have more vulnerability to that, just like they have more vulnerability to getting hit with a crowbar, right? Men can almost can take hits that women would almost kill women, and yeah, it's just true, right? So that's what I was really referring to. I think you might be making a little bit too much of it. And the last super chat of the night is Bright Dawn for $10 USA. The pretense of the Republic being alive being bullshit is the point. The Romans loved their bullshit. Nobody nowadays takes Octavian's Republican pretensions seriously, but it kept him from ending up like his uncle. Well, I mean, didn't Caesar also say he was maintaining the Republic? I think the right wing, I mean, he just had people who saw through the bullshit. I think the right wing needs to design something similar, a modern principate. Okay, fine. I understand there's a need for the noble lie. I'm not in the business of noble lies. I'm just not. I'm not your man for noble lies. I am fighting the war of belief. And if you need to develop in some ways, the Republic currently is a noble lie, right? In some ways, democracy is a noble lie. In some ways, the Constitution is a noble lie. At this stage, the Constitution hasn't been active law since the end of the Civil War, and it really hasn't been active law since the end of the New Deal. But we still go through these stupid motions and we use it for our purposes. It is a noble lie. We will save the Republic in the name of the Constitution, both being effectively non-existent. It is a noble lie. Great, more power to you. Let's do the best we can in the name of order and the God of order that we serve. And in the name of Jesus Christ, more power to that struggle. I'm not in the business of noble lies. It's not my job to dish out noble lies. And wrong place for that. The Caesar will have to deal with that, and if it gets me killed, I will have to bear my witness as I see fit. Hopefully, it won't. But thank you very much, and that is the end of the super chats. And I guess we're going on to the Psalm. I put this somewhere. Okay. I think I had Psalm. I wrote it and then I immediately lost it. Psalm 12, King James Version to end the stream. I cut off Psalm 2 last time. I apologize for that. But Psalm 12 reads, "Help, Lord, for the godly man ceaseth, for the faithful fail among the children of men. They speak vanity, every one of his neighbors. With flattering lip and with a double heart do they speak. The Lord shall cut off all flattering lips, and the tongues that speaketh proud things. Who have said, with our tongue will we prevail, our lips are our own. Who is Lord over us? For the oppression of the poor, for the sighing of the needy, now will I arise, saith the Lord. I will set him in safety from him that puffeth at him. The words of the Lord are pure words, as silver tried in a furnace of the earth, purified 7 times. Thou shalt I keep them, O Lord. Thou shalt I preserve them from this generation forever on. The wicked walk on every side when the vilest men are exalted." Thank you very much for joining me in this podcast, Letters from Fiddler's Green, number 61, and I'll hopefully see you in 2 weeks.